He's done a great job.
You are live. Thank you very much, Amanda. I'm gonna call our meeting to order for what's today, October 28th, our ARPA meeting. Amanda, could you just do a roll call for attendance and quorum, please?
Sure, Ms. Bramer,
Here,
Mr. Dickinson,
Me.
Ms. Seaver, here, Mr. Agnew.
Here.
Gillis, here, Mr. Thomas, Mr. Beatty,
Here.
Mr. Lamont, Mr. Wild.
Here.
Mr. Gaddy.
Here.
Mr. Leggett. You do have a quorum.
thank you very much, Amanda. I think everyone should have received the minutes by email. And I think they looked good. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting? Thank you, Mr. Agnew. Do I have a second? Anybody else? I'll second that. All in favor of the motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting, please say aye.
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 Opposed, abstentions, that carries. Thank you. Do you guys want to jump right into it, or do you want to have go to the discussion items? Oh, yeah, sorry. Thank you. Thank you, Rick. We do have privilege of the floor and public comment first. If anyone wants to speak this morning, you're more than welcome to come up. Yeah, go to the podium. Yeah.
Thank you, Claudia. Jeff Made of the Cool Insurance Arena. Good morning, everybody. Obviously, we did put an application in for some ARPA funds to hopefully renovate Heritage Hall, which most of you probably will know. It's a 7,000 square foot conference center that probably hasn't been updated since 1980. So the wear and tear is it's pretty ugly in Heritage Hall. We do think if we get some ARPA funds from the county and maybe the city of Glens Falls as well, we can upgrade the room completely and bring in a lot of new business, weddings, business events, just a lot more events, more staffing, more visitors to Warren County. We think we can partner with the Queensbury Hotel to do some bigger conventions. So we think if we do get the funding to upgrade Heritage Hall, it'd be a win-win for the arena, the city of Glens Falls, and Warren County. We put together a pretty detailed budget here a few months ago, and we shared it with, at that point, Ryan Moore, and I know Claudia has seen it. I'm not sure if she shared it with the committee, but we really do believe this would be a great investment from the county into the arena. Certainly, you invested it into us quite a bit over the last 7 years that I've been here, and we're extremely appreciative. So, but we do think this would be a great investment and would certainly allow us to get to another level inside the building. So happy to answer any questions if you have any at the moment.
Go ahead. Yep, Supervisor Sieber.
Thank you. On the application, if I'm recalling it correctly, I thought you had indicated that you did receive ARPA dollars from the city of Glens Falls. But today I heard you say hopefully. Have you secured dollars in a partnership with Glens Falls?
I think Pat Dowd may be able to speak on that a little bit better than me. We have not secured the funding yet, Rachel. We have had meetings with the mayor and Pat as well. So it has not gone before the council yet, but we're pretty hopeful that we will secure some of the funding. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's not formal as of today.
Supervisor Beatty.
So I'm glad to see you today, Jeff. Thanks. Have you applied to Queensbury for some of their ARPA funding? Because I know they've got a huge amount.
We have not, Doug. I wasn't aware that they had a lot of funding, but we certainly will. Now that I'm aware of that.
Okay, thanks.
And the budget is part of their application in the dashboard. Anyone wants to look at it there? Anything else? Anybody else? Mr. Dowd? Oh, I'm sorry, Beth. Sorry, Ms. Gills.
Have there been any other funds secured for this yet?
For this project?
Yeah.
No, we're asking the county for funding and then the city of Glens Falls.
Anybody else? Thanks, Jeff. Oops, Mr. Agnew.
Was there any consideration to some type of public capital campaign for this as well, or no?
I think if the funding was less than we needed for the project, we would probably go on a public campaign. We've done it a few times over the last 7 years. We've always been pretty successful. So if we need to, we would go out to the public or we would find internal operating cash to finish the project.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Yes, good morning. I'm the aforementioned Pat Dowd from the city of Glens Falls. I'm a community development director, and so I'm here to speak both for the for the money for Heritage Hall, which definitely needs the upgrade. The city of Glens Falls has in its plan, 220,000, I think it might be 200,000, to go toward that project. In addition, I'm here to ask and to talk about a recreation upgrade that we're asking the county to help with. The city of Glens Falls has put $500,000 of our own ARPA funding into rebuilding basketball, tennis, what's the new thing? Pickleball, some of the other kind of sport that need outdoor courts to upgrade all of the courts in the city. So we're asking for $250,000 of county money to support our goal in getting those courts set. And I'm happy to take questions if there are any.
Ms. Gillis?
Pat, did you get any grant funds for that at all?
We're in the process of working through the budget, as I said, where the full budget is 1.1 million. So the city's put in $500,000 to get started on the project. And then we're working through where the rest of the money's coming from. Yes. So yes, would we like grant funds? Absolutely. Can we work with grant funds? Absolutely. Yes, I will. Thanks, Beth.
Supervisor Seaver?
Thank you, Chairwoman. My question is as it relates to tourism in the city of Glens Falls. I know Amy's done an incredible job in connecting Glens Falls throughout the entire county. And over the last few years, we've tried very hard to reach out to all our municipalities, local groups, and other efforts to talk about how we can invest our occupancy tax to really have that return on how hard all of the hoteliers and short-term rentals are working to collect that tax.
Sure.
Have you applied, and I don't sit on that committee, but I do try to look at the applications and I don't recall seeing any, but twice a year now, we have an opportunity for groups and entities, businesses and municipalities to be applying for assistance through the occupancy tax fund. And I know one of the things that has not really been used this year is the municipality category. Only a couple of municipalities came forward and said, yeah, we would like this money for events or investment to be able to increase tourism. So is that something that you've looked into? And
It's not something that I've personally looked into. I've been at the city about 7 months now, so I'm relatively short term. I can talk to Amy and I can talk to the mayor and them, but unfortunately, I don't have a yes or no answer for it.
Anybody else? Okay,
I have a question.
sorry.
Hey, Pat.
Supervisor Dickinson,
How
how
are
are
you?
you?
Good. So you were asking us for 250?
Yes,
Did you mention the 200,000? An additional 200,000 or just straight 250?
no, the 200,000, there's two kind of applications in front of you. The first one is for Heritage Hall, where they're asking for 500,000, we're putting in 200, the city is putting in 200,000 of our ARPA money.
Okay,
And the second one is the courts where we've put in 500, the city's put in 500,000 and we're asking for 200,000 of ARPA money.
250.
Yes, sorry, 250.
Okay, trying to confuse me, aren't you?
I'm trying not to, no, I'm trying not to confuse myself either.
All right, thank you.
Thank
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Dowd. Anybody else from the public? Okay. All right, let's jump into it then. So Gina provided us an updated spreadsheet showing the applications that we have not yet awarded funding for. So I thought we would do like we did last time and use this as a worksheet and just try to work out some numbers, and then we'll circle back around to see if we have any resolutions that we want to make today. Okay, if we need more information, we can certainly ask for it. There's that opportunity. And I know that, Ethan, I'm going to put you on the spot later about some of the ones that you have been following up on and getting some more information about. So,
Madam Chair.
yes, sorry, Dennis.
So we have a balance of 2.9 million.
That's right, right, Gina?
What are these add up to?
If you look on the right-hand side, I think Gina did that. Which column did you use for that total, Gina? Okay, okay, so I think that was column H on the spreadsheet, only because I was looking at this last night. I think I know what. I think I know it was, yeah, column H. Which is not awarding everyone all of their funding. It was using that same formula we used last time.
Okay, now you've confused me. This column H,
Yep, it's the one titled proposed prorated award.
yes. How much does that add up to?
That's that number that she put at the top, 1.9. I think that's really great because that does give us a little buffer. There are some things out there I put on the bottom. Maybe Gina, did you put them on the bottom? Okay. There's a few here. I would have added one more to the bottom of your spreadsheet. So Salvation Army. They have been bounced around to different committees between ARPA and the Office for Community Services, the Committee on Community Services regarding their Meals on Wheels program that originally went out as an RFP from the ARPA committee. I would like to be able to give Salvation Army the opportunity to modify their ARPA application to us if their Meals on Wheels proposal does not get accepted. Because really, we were the ones that went out and asked them for a proposal. They did not later apply for additional ARPA funding. They didn't want to be double dipping, and they were advised, I think by Ryan Moore, not to request a second round of ARPA funding for COVID loss or for a COVID program. So I really think that we should try to give them an opportunity with whatever funds we have left over after we award everyone who has been, who has applied in those applications that we are looking at now.
How much have they gotten so far?
They haven't gotten any.
Okay.
And if you remember, Salvation Army was out there with truckloads full of food during the pandemic. They were responding to that need in a humongous way. So I think we need to take a look at helping them out either with COVID losses or a continuation of COVID programming to help our most vulnerable populations as we go forward. But we don't have to decide that today. The other one that kind of falls in this category is the county EMS agencies. There are some, as we know, who applied, and there are some who didn't apply. And there's some push at the County Board of Supervisors to have some of these other EMS agencies considered. So I have reached out to them. They would need to provide some estimate of the dollars that they would qualify for COVID loss, in my mind. But again, I think we need to work through these applications first, the ones that we have in front of us.
Have you talked to Lake George?
Yep, I think so. What's your contact's name?
Travis.
Yeah, I think yeah.
Okay. Good.
And then the last one, and I'll come to you, Supervisor Sieber, is mental health. If we have leftover funds, I think we need to look at going back to increase the $1 million that we provided to mental health, because I'll give you an update about that, but they are definitely using those funds and we have a need in the community that is really serious. I wasn't able to attend the panel last night on mental health services, but from what I understand, it was held up at SUNY. It's an increasing need even now, even though we're coming out of the pandemic. And I will get off my soapbox. Supervisor Sieber.
Thank you. I wanted to just comment when Co-Chair Dickinson did regarding the EMS issue. You said you reached out to all the EMS. Did you reach out to all the Queensberry EMS?
Yes. I got the list from Anne Marie, and I believe I have reached out to everyone. All of the ones that did not submit an application, including Glens Falls.
Well, my reason for asking is a couple did within Queensberry, but deadlines are set for a reason. I think it's really important that we recognize that there were many, many other entities and organizations that would have applied for funding had it been a rolling deadline or that got extended. That being said, I think that we need to be very careful when we're funding for additional staff. Two of the proposals within Queensberry, one was a direct result of attending the mass vaccination site and wanting reimbursement for all the hours that they put in there. And I don't know if Ethan, if you received a reply yet from public health, but we did ask if there was funding there for that. And the other was for a training initiative that now is
we had approved, but approved knowing that anyone within Warren County would be able to take that training. So if we're now going to look at funding to help with staffing in the way that North Warren has applied for that funding, then I think that we should make sure we're offering that opportunity to all of the entities, even if they already applied, because those are not programs they asked for staffing. And I just want to be very sensitive to that. I also think that there's other types of funding that could be allotted towards EMS assistance. We also have an EMS committee that could work on some of these issues as well. So I think that there's alternative ways to be able to support all of our EMS in the county. And I hope that our leadership decides to work together to do that. I don't know if ARPA is the answer.
Those are all very good points. And I will say I did reach out about the pod at the mall. And that is a request for reimbursement of direct costs that they incurred during COVID as a result of staffing and working at the pod with the state. And they did get a lot of funding for other things, but they didn't get funding for these hard costs. It's $13,817. And when I reached out to OES and Janelle Jones, there wasn't any other funding for them. So I put them back on the list at the bottom here. You'll see.
I thought we approved them last.
We didn't. We had referred them to public health.
But I thought, provided there wasn't funding for that, we voted on that. With the
I'd have
caveat.
to ask,
so,
Yeah.
We're gonna do our homework.
Right.
did we? Okay. Okay. So that is already off completely. Are you guys sure? All right.
I'm never sure of anything on board, but please double check.
We will double check. And the other one, and I'll come to you, Ray,
Okay.
is Warrensburg EMS. And I agree with you completely. That's a whole different request.
Right.
Something other than just reimbursement of COVID costs. So that's on here for us to still discuss. We haven't awarded that one. Unless I'm wrong on that one too. Mr. Agnew.
That's
Yeah.
what I was gonna ask about.
Okay. Yeah, while we're going through, go ahead.
Yeah, if I could just follow up on that EMS note on, soliciting applications from other people. If we do have an EMS committee at the county.
Correct.
We
it-
do.
Can we, in a similar way that we've done, we deferred to people that are knowledgeable in the field. As we did for the, mental health, can we do a block allocation, the EMS committee? And have the experts decide the best way to allocate that lump sum between the EMS committees? Not to pass the buck, but just in terms of, hey, I'm a community planner, I'm not a specialist in EMS operations.
One of the things that we do have an EMS committee that is around. I'm not sure when the last time it met was, but they, one of the things that's always stressed is how important it is that the EMS agencies work together because they're often providing mutual aid. That's why it was brought up if we're helping one agency, but not the others, it's going to pull and put stress on the ones who didn't get any money. So I kind of like that idea of just a single block allocation, put it to the EMS committee and help them have them figure it out. Right.
I really like that suggestion, and part of the reason I like it is thinking about Supervisor Seaver's comments. And I mentioned this at the last meeting. I'm worried that we were opening a big can of worms by singling out certain nonprofits and saying, oh, we know you missed the deadline, but that's okay. We're going to let you apply now. This treats it a little bit differently, and I think it's a good idea.
Okay.
Man,
Yes, go ahead, Craig.
as chairman of that EMS committee that was set up to look at a countywide EMS system. I have to think about this idea, but as Mr. Agnew just pointed out, that this may be the fair way of allocating money to agencies that did suffer during the pandemic and have our first responders and have need. So if our committee is open to something like that, we could take that up as in that EMS committee to work with parsing out the money. After seeing what this committee goes through to divide up all the money, I don't know if I really want to take on that task though. So there is the I respect the process that this committee has set up to review, to put out for applications. People applied. We look through those applications on their merits and decide on amounts. And to open up the process after the deadline has closed is a touchy subject. So if the committee feels that to be able to distribute ARPA monies to EMS agencies fair and equitably, it may be the way to do it. Pick a lump sum, put it to the EMS committee to put it out. But as I think through it a little bit more, then I just wonder about the whole legalities of that. It's not as if we were a committee set up to do that and to be able to distribute funds.
Well, I think there's probably two ways of addressing it, depending on how the solicitations went out to the EMS squads. It could be, hey, if we're only having them prove what their financial loss was during the pandemic, and they provide an application documentation of that, evaluate that, continue on with this process through the committee, or if there is a desire to open up the application period and ask for other needs in the EMS, depending on what comes out of the application process, the EMS committee could just put forward a slate of recommendations and the ARPA committee could approve that. I mean, obviously it's going through 3 committees at that point, but you guys wouldn't actually have to be, cutting the checks and making a final determination. It could be a recommendation. Food for thought.
Yep. Yes, Supervisor Leggett.
Well, that spurs another thought here. North Warren EMS requested $200,000. $75,000 was approved by this committee. That leaves $125,000 of the original requested amount on the table. And perhaps that amount could be earmarked for the other agencies.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
yeah, on me or
Sorry, Dennis. Supervisor Dickinson.
want me to move over that side?
No, you're
Okay.
fine.
I don't have an issue with circumventing the deadline. I think one of the things that I hear from people is they didn't realize that it included them in some of these things, and I think that's what's happening. We get these, we discuss them in public, and somebody goes, geez, I didn't realize that, I should have applied. So I don't mind looking at requests after the deadline. EMS is particularly snarly thing to deal with. We have a lot of EMSs in the county. They all need money. They're basically funded by, in our situation, the towns. I don't know. I mean, an ambulance is $250,000. They always need money. And we certainly can use money. We, as everybody know, the town has taken over our EMS. It's the town of Lake George EMS now. It's not private anymore. We're doing very well with it, but we've had an issue with employees. In order to run an EMS, you need a core of full-time employees. We've had that, and then we've had some of them leave, which really upsets the finances, because now you're bringing in part-timers and getting into overtime. So there's a need in all the EMSs, and I think we should take a look at them all.
So I think what we can do though is set this discussion aside. And there will be money still remaining after we go through the rest of these and come back, circle back around to the EMSs. In the meantime, we can think more about whether we want to allocate a certain amount of money and send it over to the EMS committee or try to do it ourselves. Yes.
How many are in the county?
Hold on. I have a list from Anne Marie. Hold on. Hold on. I'm on it right now. There were 9 that didn't submit anything. But there are one. There's, okay, sorry, Bay Ridge, Bolton, Empire, Glens Falls, Hague, Johnsburg, Lake George, Rockwell Falls, North Queensbury, North Warren, Stony Creek, Warrensburg, West Glens Falls.
13.
How many is that? 13.
13.
Where's Rockwell? But that was in Saratoga County.
No, Rockwell is Lake Luzerne.
Okay.
I believe. That's the address of the contact person anyway. So you guys want to just leave it for now?
Sure.
Yes. Yes, Supervisor Wild. You
Thank you. I spent a little time on the EMS committee. And from my recollection, it was brought together because of the fact that there were many in this county that felt that that service was collapsing because of not having enough staffing and funding to make things happen. This is a major service that every constituent may need. Hopefully not, but may need. And if you talk about going across the county and providing benefits to every citizen, this happens to be one of the ones that stands out to me. So what I'd like to do is see if we can make sure we allocate some significant money to try to figure out how to make this happen. It's been on the agenda for at least 4 years, at least over my recollection. So we haven't made any progress. This is an opportunity to make some progress along those lines. So that's just my thought. Thank you.
Okay, Supervisor Sieber.
Thank you. I would agree with my colleagues across the way here regarding setting aside if there's going to be money at the end of this process. But prioritizing those that have applied within the deadline. I do think that our public information officer and the meetings being all on YouTube and live and the advocacy from our local papers about the ARPA dollars. I disagree with the chairman from the co-chair of the committee from Lake George from the perspective that we have advertised. Now, maybe someone isn't aware that they'd fall into whatever category, but our planning department went above and beyond to answer any questions from so many people that called in to ask about those qualifications. And as you know, from reviewing the applications, that we allowed any applicant to come in and put in an application. So even if they weren't going to qualify under one of those particular areas, the planning department still worked with them to do so. So again, I think we should spend the time that we have here today talking about the entities that did apply within the deadline and have put in a detailed application and then circle back to these other issues. Thank you.
I think there's consensus to do that. So let's go forward.
Just if I could.
Yep.
I think the application process has been extremely valuable. But before we did the application process, we tried to establish the draft priorities in January. And the first one was the immediate response to the ongoing public health crisis. And then the second was to assist vulnerable populations. And then 3, improve county resiliency and disaster response. So I think the EMS does fit into that pretty well. I think the application process is very important, but I don't think that we should lose sight of the priorities that we landed on after talking to stakeholders and the survey and our discussions as a committee. I just, the application is good and it's a good process and we have to continue on it and keep it objective and fair, but I don't think we should have it override our priorities. We do have a responsibility as a committee, to do the work and think about these as it relates to the spending overall.
Okay. So I'm gonna march us forward and we'll circle back. Okay. I'm kind of wanting to jump right to the Heritage Hall application while these guys are here. We can talk about it. We can pencil in what we want. And then we will take resolutions at the end once we work through some of this. I'm picturing that we will go through page 1 and then down just to the highlighted section that says remaining apps. See how long that takes us. Okay. So if you go to the second page, there's two there. The Heritage Hall, and then the other one is the summer concert series. Are you guys with me? Okay. If we go based on the formula about the score, the award resulting from the score is 345,000. Yes, Supervisor Seaver.
I guess my question could be directed to also the chairman of occupancy tax. You. I think first, most importantly, is the commitment. It sounds like there's a commitment from the city of Glens Falls that ARPA dollars are being utilized in conjunction, but a much smaller amount than what is being requested by the county. And based on the assistance to tourism, travel, and hospitality, and then also a summer concert series, these are things that we typically see coming through occupancy tax requests at a county level for support. We know our numbers with occupancy tax have been incredibly positive. We've watched them continue to grow. We've been very fortunate during COVID to have an increase in all of those numbers. Is that something that, if not in its entirety and its part, that occupancy tax could take a look at in assisting with it so that we can still allot additional dollars for other not-for-profit and immediate COVID responses?
If I may.
Yes, sorry.
Yes and no. We've been very supportive of the city of Glens Falls and the Civic Center with OCTAX. We have a $250,000 a year commitment to Heritage Hall.
Mhm.
That's a lot of OCTAX. We also have an ongoing $100,000 a year that we've committed to them. First, for their capital, the fund, we're in the 4th year of a 5-year program.
With general dollars, is that direct dollars in the budget? Is that what you're talking about?
OCTAX,
Oh, that's OCTAX
that's
too. Okay.
OCTAX money. So between the two, it's $350,000 a year. I anticipate at some point in time with their plans to move forward, especially with Heritage Hall, that they will come to OCTAX and ask for some money. I wouldn't hesitate to give them some, but if they qualify for ARPA money, we definitely should use the ARPA money.
We've been trying to identify alternate sources of funding since the majority of the funding got cut down significantly from the start of the process. So I would appreciate any consideration from OCTAX to try to continue to free up money for other entities like mental health and priorities.
They have not approached us.
They have not.
No.
So again, I would very much encourage you to do so.
I heard you.
Thank you.
Mr. Agnew?
Thank you, Rick.
I'm sorry, Supervisor Seaver, did you have anything further?
Oh, no, I'm through. Thank you.
Mr. Agnew?
Just a point of clarification, I believe the number we would be considering is 250, not 345. Right. Right, from line H.
It's, so remember I said if they fell in the bottom half, that their request then was divided in half, but these guys don't fall below the second, they don't fall in the bottom half.
Well, at the beginning, we said the total we were considering was based on line H, which is proposed prorated award, and that's the 250,000.
Yeah.
That's the number we're looking at.
I would say anywhere in between there, that is.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we recommend $250,000 for the Heritage Hall project.
I'll second it.
Second from Mr. Thomas, Supervisor Thomas. Discussion. Yes, Supervisor Wild.
Madam Chair, I'm sure probably attorney will probably do this, but it's also contingent upon them receiving enough funds to move forward with the project in totality.
Let's let Mr. Mead speak to that. We've asked others if they can use the funding or if they don't get fully funded, is the project kaput? Would you be okay with me asking him that?
Of course.
Okay. Can you go to the podium, Jeff, please?
No, the answer is, obviously we did a pretty detailed line by line budget as to all the trades that would take to get us to the full project. We have a budget of about $740,000. But if we got between, 250 and 340 from Warren County and money from the city of Glens Falls, we could get the project done. It may not be at the type of level that, we anticipated in our grandest dreams. But as I did mention, we can certainly use some internal operating revenue as well to finish the project. So no, if we got the $250,000, we would certainly get the project started and we would be able to complete it as to the way we wanted to. Maybe not immediately, but we would definitely complete it.
Let me follow up with you. Okay.
I'm not sure if that was the answer we're looking for. It should be a yes or no. Is the project in totality, as it was stated, going to be completed? And I think that's something that should be for everyone.
I think he said yes.
Completed within the time frame that we have to make sure all the ARPA dollars are spent, which
Well,
is another 2 years.
Right. That is also part of every contract, if I'm not mistaken. I'll come back to you in a second, Mr. Elman. Supervisor Beatty?
Yeah, I'm in support of this. We all know how valuable the arena is from a tourist standpoint, from a county standpoint. That's just not deniable that it's a huge asset. I do wish they would go to the OCTAX committee too and seek additional funding, because I definitely feel that falls within the parameter of OCTAX. But I will support this $250,000 for the Heritage Hall in hopes that this committee will see fit to do that also, and we can move this along.
Okay, let me go to Mr. Elman. Do you have any comments or advice for us at this point? I'm sure you do, but relevant to this application.
What I'm working through on the fly is a shift in my thinking and really the categorization of these funds, because this is going to be construction. And it's definitely a capital improvement. And there's an overlay in the Treasury commentary that was provided by the Department of Treasury that addresses capital improvements. So it's a little different than all of the other types of awards that this committee has been reviewing and voting on, because they fall cleanly in what I've been calling one of the buckets, the small business bucket, not-for-profit bucket, assistance to individuals bucket. And I'm not reading through the 117 pages of commentary as quickly as I would like to be able to give an on-the-cuff answer. So I don't think there's an issue, but I would ask the committee to move forward with your deliberations and just subject to me confirming. I just want to be 100% clear, because I don't recall applying these capital expenditure rules to any of the prior awards that we did. So I just want the opportunity after the vote and after this meeting to sit and make sure we're tight on the requirements for capital expenditures.
Thank you. Mr. Leggett, Supervisor Leggett.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm not in favor of this appropriation because it does go to capital costs, and in the application here it says the pandemic shut us down for over a year and we lost full hockey season. We've bounced back, but not at the level. So it was a hitch in the gate that there was capital plans to improve Heritage Hall. The pandemic came and it got slowed down on the project, but you are doing an incredible job at the Civic Center to bring business back and such. So thinking about the limited funds that we have to distribute through the community to folks that had suffered through the pandemic, there's other higher priorities in my mind than the capital improvements to Heritage Hall.
Mr. Agnew.
With Supervisor Thomas's agreement, I would amend the motion to say dependent upon Attorney Elman's review.
Of course.
Sure.
Yeah.
I agree with it.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands. And we have a motion and a second with the amendment by the move-in and the second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Uh,
Aye. Opposed,
Stay.
abstentions? That carries.
Thank you.
Okay. Do you guys want to, let's deal with the next one as well, the summer series. Right below it, the Park Theater Foundation Summer Series Concert. They've requested $242,250. My understanding is this is for a new, I think it's a new summer series of concerts.
Does that fall under,
The application itself was listed as addressing, I think the justification was addressing mental health issues by providing
theater?
outdoor theater as a way for people to maintain sanity. In the application, I think that was the justification for it. So I think, well, on reading of the application, there's
Ms. Gillis?
I mean, they asked for 242, and if we cut them down to 50, what are they going to actually be able to execute?
That's a good point. Should we leave this one aside for now?
Can we ask them? I mean,
Yeah,
is there a way?
We can go back and ask them.
At 50, what would you do?
Supervisor Seaver?
I think
I-
even though talking about a 50,000 mark, again, if I'm hearing the chairman from occupancy tax correctly, that's an opportunity to apply again, twice a year, also through the municipal funding. I think there's lots of other ways along with, well, I don't want to say town because or city funding. I'm not familiar with if they already give them an allocation or not, but I do think there's 3 opportunities to make up that difference if 50 is awarded. And, we know that it was something that was tremendously impacted the arts during COVID. So I don't know if setting it aside is the right thing to do. I would be supportive of the 50 and knowing that we could give them the advice on how to apply for the other dollars.
Okay, so we'll put it on our worksheet as 50, or is that a motion?
I would make that motion. I'm fine with that. Unless there
Is there a
is
second?
no one else.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Agnew seconds for 50,000. And in the meantime, I'll reach out. Okay,
Madam Chair, what's the rush?
yes.
We could always ask for more information. It seems like we're just throwing money around.
Supervisor Seaver?
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I would be very clear on this, that they did submit an application. It is in our grading system here, our scoring application. This isn't a late entry, and it's something that we've reviewed in detail. I'm sure if you would give everyone a moment, we could log in and we could look at that application. I'm just looking for my login info. Again, I think
that would be a good idea.
did I misunderstand at the beginning? Don't we have representatives here familiar with this?
No, not
No,
this one,
okay.
but I did pull up just while you're looking at your login.
Right.
It is not a brand new program. It is already running.
Okay.
So
I think it's a
I was
from the
wrong
application,
on
it's a
that.
great application. I think the purpose of it was to provide some sort of support for residents so they could maintain mental health, behavioral health. It does sound like a really good project. It sounds like an excellent application for occupancy tax. I think that if the committee
Yeah.
looks at the application and figures out how to frame it, I mean, it could be addressing mental health, or it could be support for, the hardest hit industries, tourism.
Just as a follow-up though, didn't we just approve 60,000 or some large amount to Warrensburg's EMS for lost revenue for Smoke Eaters Jamboree?
30,000.
30,000?
I think the difference would be that this is for new programming going forward. The park,
And not lost revenue?
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. I mean,
Sorry.
great
go ahead.
project.
Mr. Agnew, then,
Actually, I think.
oh, sorry, Dennis.
Rebecca
I
Dickinson was-
do have my head turned to you.
I'm gonna move. I'm not putting up with this. This is the lowest percentage, 22%. Of all the applications, there's one over 22%. I think that's an indication that it's not a real viable project. That's my opinion. I don't think we should give them anything.
Mr. Agnew.
So I was just gonna make some comments about what the Park Theater had done during the pandemic to try to be helpful in terms of the types of things that Ethan was talking about. You know, they did a series of free concerts for first responders and folks at the hospital to try to help mitigate the stress of everything that's going on. So although it made me smile when I first saw the application and they had put it in that particular category of supporting the public health response, I do understand why they popped it in there. And with regard to Supervisor Dickinson's comments, I will be honest, I didn't rate it that highly myself. But I did want to speak in support of the work that they did during the pandemic, and that I think that their plan and their heart is in the right place when they talk about what they'd like to be able to do.
You think there's an opportunity for, you know, if the committee thinks that it was a, you know, we did talk about supporting, you know, tourism, hospitality as some of the, and arts as some of the hardest hit industries. Do we have them reframe the application? Is that something we can do, or is it in terms of, hey, the services they provided and the losses they took during the pandemic?
Just a minute, I have Mr. Leggett.
Thank you. I rated this one fairly low. I do appreciate their efforts on their application. It says Park Theater Foundation plans to expand its summer series concert. This is, you know, going into in the future, addressing negative impacts and such. I think it's a very low priority. I would not be in favor based on the limited amount of money that we have to allocate to others.
Supervisor Dickinson.
Based on Mr. Agnew's comments, I would be willing to give him the 50,000.
Any further? Just, yes, Supervisor Seaver.
Supervisor Dickinson, please keep that in mind when I make my next statement. That you just agreed to support Mr. Agnew. We spent a lot of time at the last meeting talking about the priority percentage and how that's not really a good indicator on the ranking of the applications. That the priority percentage was, people applied it in a different way, that it was put there to say, you know, is this something that fits within the idea of ARPA? And some of us took the priority and said, yes, if they were awarded this money, it's a priority to them. Others of us said, we're looking at the, you know, overall goal of this, and is this a priority within the ARPA community, within the community? So we did spend a lot of time talking about how the average score and the category rank, those are ones that were more reliable, and we looked at how they were scored. So I just want to highlight that the priority percentage was applied so differently. It was never intended to be the lead determination of the factors, you know, before us when making determinations. And that being said, again, I don't think it ranked in my top anything, but when I looked at the types of services it provides to people that are low income, who don't have a lot of resources, who were afraid and are afraid to still leave home to walk, and to be able to offer also that tourism aspect to our community, I think it warrants consideration, and that's why I would make that motion.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Alman.
I do not want to interfere with the debate. I need clarification, and I'm hoping maybe planning can help because of the category that was selected. So there's two overarching buckets that we've classified. One is responding to the public health impacts of the public health emergency. And that tends to be the mitigation and prevention efforts that occurred, the medical expenses relating to testing and treating, behavioral health care, and then preventing and responding to increased violence as a result. I think that that designation is for that bucket of applications under the rule. All of the other areas fall under this larger heading of negative economic impacts, or to address negative economic impacts is how it's worded as categories. So while there's a great discussion going on about connecting it to what that wording is for the larger grouping of this, which is to support public health response. Legally, under the rule, there's 4 smaller buckets and it has to fit into one of those 4 buckets. If that's the heading, and I see
Well, keep in mind that
Ethan
the
nodding
applicants,
that he understands what I'm saying,
Yeah.
so I think I'm on the right course. So really, I need when the committee makes a decision to be very clear as the basis for the award. And
Can
the
I-
concern is that listed basis may not be appropriate.
right, the applicants selected their own, so we can put them into a different bucket. Ethan, can you address this, please?
Yeah, to Larry's point,
Absolutely.
you know, as we continue to do these compliance reports for ARPA funding, there are some pretty rigid guidelines on where we should be classifying these things. So if an applicant comes in and says they want to do something for this and they classify it themselves, but then on a closer read, we say probably better fit for this, and we're only gonna give them partial funding for what they asked for, we might end up having to reclassify it in order to support their programming. So there is we have to do homework, and to Larry's point, there's hundreds of pages of comments on this stuff. So in order, it's very difficult to make a hard and fast decision on how to support an application for mental health that, you know, they're asking for 250, we're going to give them $50,000. What does that look like? You know, as we do these quarterly compliance reports, you'll see like there's a lot of work that goes into it, and we need to be very diligent with how we classify these things. So I think as a committee, we can, you know, make a motion to support Park Theater Foundation for a certain amount of funding, and then we might have to do a little homework and discussion with the applicant to make it see where that fits exactly. I mean, I think there is consensus that we want to support Park Theater Foundation. But like we have done with other applicants who asked for a larger sum of money, and then the committee's responded with a smaller award. We're just going to need to do some back and forth. You know, Larry's going to need to do some research. I'm going to do some research, and we're going to talk with the applicant. So I think if we could tentatively support them.
Does that
we'd have to-
provide you enough guidance?
No, because the committee's decision needs to identify the purpose for the award. And
Is there
it doesn't
another
matter to me what
bucket?
the purpose is
I know,
identified.
is there another bucket that talks about the theater and arts and cultural aspect having been hit from the pandemic? I mean, I see it also as behavioral health assistance, having an opportunity for people to get out and enjoy themselves and watch a concert.
And
is helpful.
I'm not going to say this committee cannot issue those funds under that. I just need that to be clear when it occurs, because I don't have the authority to make it up. And the Board of Supervisors, when they take their vote, it needs to be clear what the purpose of that funding is for.
Okay,
Yeah, to your point, Larry, I guess my recommendation would be that we don't necessarily, we can tentatively say we want to support a certain amount for Park Theater Foundation, not to pass it along to the full Board of Supervisors from this meeting, but at the next ARPA committee meeting, we can have done the homework to fully understand what category that fits into. So when it comes out of this committee going to the full Board of Supervisors, then we can do that knowing that it fits within all the, you know, obligations from the U.S. Treasury Department.
Amanda, if I take a vote today and with the understanding that it won't go to the next full board meeting, is that acceptable?
You want it to go to the November 18th board meeting?
Yeah,
Can I make a suggestion? And I apologize that you vote on what the use is. And if I have a deep legal reason why it doesn't fit, then I'll just advise that it be pulled, but I'd rather the committee move forward. My goal is not to hold up the committee
okay.
in any way. I just want to make sure that the dollars are properly allocated and that the decision is properly made. That's all.
Okay, I'm gonna go back to Supervisor Seaver since she made the motion.
May I ask our county attorney then a question?
Yes,
Within this motion, would it be then appropriate to put it into the categories? And I assume, can it be in 2 categories? Now, it has to be
One
one,
would be preferred.
but assistance to tourism, travel, or hospitality,
Yeah.
or address negative economic impacts. I mean, would that be a clearer?
I would suspect there's a lot more room in that than there is on the one that's
Okay,
being reported on the spreadsheet.
so either address negative? In your opinion, where would there be a little more latitude?
I would think the tourism category is a much broader category.
So recognizing that these summer concerts series would have an assistance to tourism, travel, hospitality, as well as there's an aspect to public health, an aspect to the negative impacts. I would amend the resolution to fall within the assistance to tourism, travel, and hospitality category for 50,000.
Thank you. Good, okay. Mr. Watt,
Madam
Supervisor
President,
Wild.
Thank you very much. It's similar to the question I had before. Can we have them come back to us and tell us exactly what they're going to be able to do with $50,000? Their application said that they were going to do a number of things for the 200 and something thousand. But if it's 50,000, will they just be able to just rent equipment and not really expand their offering? I really don't know. So I'd really like to understand the full benefit of what they will give us for $50,000 versus their application for 232,000.
Supervisor Seaver.
And just looking at their detailed budget that was submitted on July 28th, I mean, it does break down into all these different categories where they would be looking at applying some of the dollars. So I think it's clear that they can do significant work with 50,000. I don't think we're in the business of telling them, you know, here's the 50 and you have to apply it particularly towards your supplies or materials, plus your small operating equipment, your communication promotion, your print, your radio. We don't do that for anyone else. So I'm not inclined to start that process now or to have an ongoing list of applicants coming back in each time we've reduced the amount. I know planning has worked hard with going out to all these applicants and saying, you know, can you do this with less than what's been asked for if awarded? So I'm comfortable looking at their detailed budget, which frankly, it's a very detailed budget.
I just want to clarify that so far planning has only reached out to the small businesses. Planning has not reached out to the not-for-profits yet. So we could do that if this award goes through at the 50,000. Yeah, we could do it for all the ones. I mean, we asked Mr. Mead right here. I don't think we'll need to follow up separately, but I think we can do that. Mr. Agnew.
You know, I can't speak for the Park Theater Foundation, but having spent 40 years as a professional fundraiser, I can tell you that any proposal I put in for grants or to a major donor never expected the full amount, hoped for the full amount. And so I would be incredibly surprised if they didn't have a bunch of other irons in the fire and contingency plans for what would have to happen if they didn't get full funding. Having said that, I think the idea that planning reach out to any of these that don't get the full funding is absolutely the right thing to do. So we know especially within the prescribed period of time that they're going to be able to do the project.
Okay, Gina, ready?
Madam Chairwoman.
Yeah.
And I apologize to the supervisor from Queensberry. Can we change the motion to be the categories of assistance to nonprofits or tourism?
Yeah, we're allowed to do more than one and/or.
Let's do two and
Okay.
if I determine legally it's just clearer and stronger in one, then I
Right.
can put it in that one bucket for the board to consider.
I do see on their application that they are not for profit, so
Correct.
I think that makes sense. So I'd be happy to amend that motion to provide it as the assistance to travel, tourism and hospitality and or assistance to not-for-profits in the amount of 50,000, if the second.
Thank you. Okay,
I have almost no legal concern of it being in the nonprofit because programming is a permitted use under the nonprofit category.
Thank you.
okay. And I have a question that will become evident in just a second, but I'd like to make it clear or not, or however you want to frame it, as the 50,000 can be applied to anything within their program, or do you have a specific thing that you want to fund, like more speakers or?
I believe they're
Just
gonna be
leave it-
limited by their application.
Obviously
And that's true
within
for
their,
everybody. That's true. Every award that's given and the contract that they're signing is there. They have to sign certifications that the funds were used consistent with what was in their application.
okay, as long as they're within their application, they're with it, okay. Anything further? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
One opposed? That carries. Thank you. So we'll reach out to them. And while we're on this topic, I had a question from the World Awareness Children's Museum because we did not fund them the full request that they made. And they wanted to know if we were directing them to a specific program element. They had two main things that they were going to do. I was going to respond back that as long as you stay within the application program that you applied for, you can do either of those things.
I would say yes.
Yes, okay.
I'll defer to-
Yes,
Madam Chair, can I get some
Supervisor.
clarity on that? So that what you're saying is they had actually two different elements to their application?
I'm looking at this is the summary. It says that they would develop and implement a robust 12-month marketing plan that will establish World Awareness Children's Museum as a must-visit family destination in the area. That was one part of their proposal. The second part was get an engineering assessment of our building to set the stage for future renovations during an upcoming capital campaign.
So if they do one or the other in totality, then that's what you're saying.
Yeah,
I can agree with that.
great. Thank you. All right, good. I just didn't want to respond back to her without getting committee consensus on that. Okay. Let's work backwards. Up on page 1 at the very bottom, ATF. ATF asked for $25,000 for their film festival. They also had information in their application about their COVID revenue loss of $400,000. They have been referred to the occupancy tax committee for funding the film fest. There was no decision made on that, so I'd like the committee to consider granting some relief to ATF on COVID loss.
I'll make that motion. You're talking about the 17,250?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Agnew on the second discussion.
Sorry. Madam Chair.
Yes,
I-
Supervisor Wild.
Just clarity, what is it that we're doing? We're gonna give them the full 25,000? Is that what you're saying?
It's $17,250.
And that was approved already, was it not?
No, it wasn't. This is one of the remaining not-for-profits that we didn't address yet. Any further discussion?
They had a great film.
Yes, Mr. Agnew.
They had a great film festival a couple of weeks ago. They're a real gem for the area. They have a wonderful artistic director. It draws people in. This is a reasonably small amount to ask for to help them out.
Not seeing anything further. I'm going to call the question on this one. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed,
Posting.
one opposed, one abstention. That carries. At the 7.5. Okay. The Hyde. You guys want to go up from these and just look at them and then we'll come back and take a motion?
Doesn't make any difference.
Okay, the Hyde, 32,400. Assistance to not-for-profits, I think is the appropriate category here. And then Charles R. Wood Theater is kind of in the same category there, and they only asked for 7,500.
I would move both those at the 32,400 and the
And the 5,400.
5,400, yeah.
Have a second to move those two at the
Sure.
prorated amount. Okay. Discussion.
Madam Chair, can you,
Yes,
one more thing?
yes.
In terms of the budget, where we stand, just for clarity, there's a balance remaining of 2.9 million,
Right?
right, of total funds to be allocated.
Correct.
Out of the nonprofits, there's a total of 1.9. Almost 2 that are available. I have a total on the far right of my first page.
The far right total is Gina took that column H, the proposed prorated award, and just summed it.
Okay,
That doesn't mean we're giving them all of this.
okay. So what other categories have we yet to fulfill, and are we to the
That's-
point where this is just the 2.9 in all 4 nonprofits?
No. 2.9 is what we have remaining that we haven't allocated out of the 12.4 million.
Okay,
This spreadsheet that you're looking at, Supervisor Wild, is all of our remaining applications. This is it. And if we go by the proposed prorated award, it totals 1.9 million, so we have 1 million left
okay.
to go back to other things.
When all the small businesses already been awarded, is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'll call the question on these two. Are we okay? Oh,
You have 8 still, so you're-
okay. Thank you, Amanda. All those in favor of the 2 for the Hyde and Charles Ardwood Theater, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Opposed.
Thank you. That anyone abstention that carries. Okay, the next one is the Queensberry Scholarship Association. Ethan, do you want to talk to this one? No, Ethan is gone. I did talk to Wayne about this earlier in the week. He had a concern about their proposal was for funding beyond the time frame. Some of the funding was out beyond the time frame. I think he told me that 100,000 was what they were proposing to spend within the appropriate ARPA timeframe.
Then why is it at 134?
Well, because that was just the formula. I think we should probably reduce them down to the 100,000. Yes,
I did not catch that, so thanks Ethan and crew for catching that, but I think it's an excellent program that we should definitely consider.
Could somebody explain to me what exactly they're doing?
does someone want to speak to this application? Queensberry Scholarship? Go ahead, Beth.
I'm not on it, but I am on the Lake George one, so I know how these scholarship committees work. They're looking for funding to give scholarships to kids to go to vocational schools.
Excellent.
That's
Thank
what my
you.
notes say. Does anyone else have any?
No, that's what it says.
I
Do you want more info?
No, I'm good.
Okay,
Thank you.
Happy to help.
I think we don't have a motion on the table yet. For what amount, Beth?
The 100.
Okay,
I'll second.
you're seconding Supervisor Seaver. Thank you. Discussion. Supervisor Beatty.
You were gonna ask Ethan, that you caught the fact that the funding is going to exceed the ARPA time limit. Was that correct?
Wait, I had talked to Wayne earlier in the week, Ethan. Ethan may not have been on.
Oh,
Sorry.
I get
Each other's thoughts.
Okay, so I would support the $100,000 if, and I'm assuming that you're correct with your
Do you know that it said 5 years, which is beyond, correct? We have to spend the money
Yeah.
sooner than that.
yeah, but we have to spend the money. Does it,
We,
my memory, does the state, they have to spend the money in that same, okay, then it's 100,000 I'll support.
Well, let's be clear, there's 2 different dates. There's a date when the funds have to be committed by these entities. And then there's an additional final deadline to actually spend, if they have not been spent yet, those committed funds. So. Yeah, it's not the full term and full time period to commit and spend. They have to be committed first and then spent by the final deadline date.
Supervisor Seaver.
I would just ask for consideration then and amending the motion to the 100,000 based on their application. And if you bear with me for 1 sec, just to read this into the record so that the county attorney is clear when developing the contract. the proposal that's before us is to address the growing need of many Warren County businesses for vocationally trained individuals. They're going to do this by financially supporting QHS students and enroll in post-high school vocational programs such as electrical, plumbing, HVAC, masonry, cosmetology, mechanics, construction, welding, etc. These students have suffered financial hardship during the pandemic and lack financial means to enroll. Therefore, their goal within this scholarship program and recognizing the drastic reduction in donations over the time frame of COVID, this program would address those not enrolling in college. It would assist financially up to 20 students the first year and then 40 each year after for 5 years. I would just say that we could make sure that our motion will just indicate that the 100,000 is to be used within the time frame specified under the ARPA guidelines, and that the county attorney could develop that in the contract, if that's okay with my colleague from Lake George. We got it.
Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, thanks. Just one final comment. When I was on the Queensbury School Board, I was a huge supporter of vocational jobs through BOCES, and the fact that this is years ago that I saw the need to have a bigger input and support from the community for vocational positions. And this falls directly in line with that thought process back then, but now more than ever it's needed. You can't find an electrician, you can't find a plumber because there's so few of them and they're in such high demand. And so anything we can do to support this is, in my opinion, totally justified. So thank you.
I'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Okay, Tri-County United Way. Ethan, do you want to speak to this one?
Yeah, so this was, looking at the application, sort of fit into the same category of what we've been doing with the Community Services Board and what we're actually going through right now by evaluating assistance for not-for-profits. Tri-County United Way had proposed basically setting up a fund to provide support for not-for-profits. I noted when evaluating the application that it does seem to be redundant with exactly what this committee is doing right now. So the decision, I thought, was either just recognize that Tri-County United Way had proposed to do exactly what it is that we're doing, soliciting out to not-for-profits, understanding what their needs were, and then evaluating their requests. Obviously, they might have some better connections with not-for-profits than we do, but we've sort of started down this process now. So I wanted the committee to consider that. So the $400,000 was to essentially do what we're doing as a committee now.
If the committee will just indulge me for 1 second, I did have a conversation with their new executive director who came in, I think since this application was submitted to us. And she said that they're still requesting funding. I told her that I felt that we thought it was duplicative, and her response was there are sometimes small COVID requests for like $900. That if we gave them a pot of money, they would then distribute that money to smaller not-for-profits or not-for-profits who just have a tiny request. Her example was someone coming to them to ask for dry cleaning costs to clean donated coats before they go back out to the community. Sorry, Beth. Yeah.
Did she have a dollar amount in?
Like all the other not-for-profits, she just said whatever we would give them. There wasn't a dollar amount. I didn't drill down into that. I can go back to her and ask.
Because I think in their application, didn't they say that they had raised like 40,000 one year and gotten out? So I mean, 400,000 and 40, like $400,000 seems like a massive amount of money to me for a $900 dry cleaning bill. But maybe if they could, again,
I
don't
think
know.
when they submitted this, they thought they would be like the Community Services Board, that they would
Right.
get all this money and then be the committee and just, but we didn't go that route. So I certainly don't think they need 400,000. But I can go back if the committee wants me to and ask her for some more practical dollar figure?
Yeah, a list of more specific. Besides that one example, I'd like to see the list of things that they are going to fund if they get money.
Okay,
Okay, besides the coach, which is a good thing, but
Yeah, from a reporting standpoint, it might be useful to take a look at what their updated proposal would be and work out the details, because if it's a series of $400 and $900 expenses throughout over the course of a few years, you just have to be careful because, all of a sudden we might be setting up subrecipient agreements and contract. So we just have to be conscious of that
yeah,
going into it. So we can, let's continue the conversation, I would say.
That was one of my concerns is that we're gonna have subrecipient contracts for little tiny amounts of money. That's an awful lot of work. That's one thing. Second thing is, I just wanted to agree that 400,000 seems like an awful lot because their model is a deficit funding model, right? They look at different types of nonprofits and what they can afford and then what might their deficit be, and then they're there to try to help bridge that gap. So 400,000, if they were going to do what we're doing, would be fine, but I don't see how that would ever work.
I'll go back to them and maybe they can submit it. Maybe they have their own COVID loss that they want to request instead. Similar to my thought about the Salvation Army. Yes, Supervisor Seaver.
It's just that in a lot of their budget, their budget narrative, they do indicate other ways that they plan on utilizing some of this, of the requests that they have. So while I'd love to be able to help them today, I do think it's appropriate to say to them, they're kind of all over the place. What category of not-for-profits, what areas are you helping? I'm familiar with how they've helped in their crisis response, and I think it's a really worthy idea. But that isn't exactly how the application reads, although reading in between the lines, it seems like that is their intent. So I'm hopeful we can help them a little bit with this in terms of trying to make it so it's clear, not just a dry cleaning bill, but I would imagine it could be co-pays of medical costs. It might be additional PPP, it might be hand sanitizer, it might be getting back to work, gas cards, car repairs, things where people that are eligible through these other non-for-profits applying, whether it be perhaps a domestic violence agency or the White House or maybe North Country Ministry, maybe other types of non-for-profits that they're looking to fill that gap. It is needed because so much of our grant funding is limited. So I can absolutely see the need for this throughout the county. I just hope that we're able to assist them through planning, and perhaps Ethan or you, Chairwoman, could work on that with them.
I will reach out. That's fine. I have no problem doing that. Okay. How about Open Door? They requested $100,000 for basically life coaches. They call them coaches, I believe, in their application. Ray?
I need to ask a question. The church that I'm affiliated with, I'm the chairman of the board, and we provide funding to them. Is this something I should stay out of? Probably.
I believe the way to frame the question would be whether you or the entity that you sit on the board for receives a financial benefit should the board take a positive action on the application.
The answer is no.
And then after that, it's a matter of personal discretion as to whether or not you would choose to participate.
Thank you.
So the last time we talked about this one, if I remember correctly, we had the conversation that we already put a lot of money into workforce development. And did we get any clarity on that?
No.
Yeah.
I can circle back with Liza about whether this one is funding she recommends. What do you think of that? Go ahead, Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you. I also think that going to Rob York and talking to him about the mental health aspect of this application talks continually about this assistance and recognizing mental illness and addiction during COVID, and then the connection, of course, to how hard it's been to raise money during COVID and what they've lost, and then how they're going to continue to try to recoup those dollars, but also help people with workforce and in particular mental and physical health. So I think it's a dual purpose. And if we're going to go back and talk about mental health, I mean, maybe that's where this should be.
Supervisor Thomas.
I'll move it forward at the 75,000.
Okay, that's a motion. Second. Discussion. Supervisor Wild.
Madam Chair, I also agree with the statement about checking with Liza in the workforce. There's a lot of activities that are going on along those lines. We're also considering something from the Salvation Army, who also has an element within their application, or at least within the discussions that I've had with them about workforce and mental health support. So I think it'd be wise for us to make sure that we don't create any kind of overlap in terms of the benefits that we're trying to provide. So taking a pause on this, I would suggest we table it and get some information from Liza and some others in the community in terms of where we're going with this as a whole.
Are we still on discussion?
Yeah. Yes.
I appreciate the motion that our supervisor from Stony Creek put forward. And I do think we want to be careful not to hit too many pauses, because this is in fact supposed to be able to help during and address negative economic impacts and address assistance during recovery and resilience as it relates to COVID. So we hit pause too much, we're avoiding the main mission of this committee that we put together, which is really to respond to our entities and our community members during a state of crisis and as they recover. So I would support moving this forward.
I believe I would like to make a motion to table.
Okay.
I would second that, just on the basis of needing to check a few boxes. Advance.
Okay, we have a motion to table in a second. I believe we're the loud discussion. I think we all know, So I'll call the question on the motion to table. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
Opposed?
No.
Can we do a roll call vote?
I would like to have a roll call, please, Amanda. So this is on the motion to table.
Okay. Ms. Bramer,
Yes.
Mr. Dickinson,
No.
Ms. Seaver,
No.
Mr. Agnew,
Yes.
Ms. Gillis,
Yes.
Mr. Thomas,
No.
Mr. Beatty,
Yes.
Mr. Wild,
Yes.
Mr. Gaddy.
Yes.
So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 in favor of tabling, so it does pass.
Just, can I ask for a point of clarification?
Yeah, just a second. Does that pass? 6?
Yeah, you have a committee of 11 now, so you have that 6.
Okay. Yes, go ahead. Supervisor Seaver.
Well, I appreciate the intent behind the motion to table. When is it tabled until?
Next, let me go to Supervisor Wild.
That's going to be up to someone like Liza to get back with us, but I would assume that she would be able to get back to us next week sometime on this.
Well, I think we should have an actual date, or
When's our next
Time.
meeting?
we haven't set a next meeting date yet.
At the next meeting.
Next meeting.
I would be surprised if it's going to be before the end of next week. Is that a reasonable assumption?
I think my notes were to reach out to Liza, Rob York, and the Salvation Army, just to
Right.
understand the redundancy there.
That should be able to be accomplished in a week, I would
I would
imagine.
imagine, right?
So,
Yeah.
Madam Chair, do you think we'll have another meeting within a week?
Probably not. Not by next Friday. I don't believe.
Then let's just say by the next meeting.
Okay.
And actually, if you don't mind, Ethan, if you need some help making some calls with that, please don't hesitate.
Thanks.
Jump in.
we'd be glad to have your assistant supervisor while making phone calls. All right, moving upwards, one more big brothers, big sisters.
Our priorities are.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion that we fund the Big Brothers Big Sisters of the Southern Adirondacks proposal at 21,930.
Second by Supervisor Dickinson, discussion. Yes,
They're a wonderful organization and never more needed than they are right now for our young folks.
yes, Beth.
I mean, they received an 86 average score and they're only asking for 25.5. So could this be one of the ones that we actually give the full amount to because of what they do?
I
And-
will,
And the committee's response to their application?
Mr. Agnew,
I'd be happy to amend it to that.
25.5.
Good.
Okay. Discuss Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, Beth was thinking exactly what I was thinking, so she already said it very well.
Not seeing any further discussion. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? That carries.
Amen.
Okay, I think we maybe want to take a break, but can we go down and talk about the city of Glens Falls application?
Where's that?
Why
It's
would
at
we
the
do that?
top of page 4. The money for Parks and Recs, $250,000. They also put themselves in support public health response. Supervisor Seaver.
Can we please have a balance after those awards are made
Or
or proposed award?
I think I can do that pretty quickly.
I do, with all respect to our planning department, I'm so glad we were able to find funding to be able to assist with staff here, but I do think perhaps the position that we created for this, again, could I ask, I know I did before, but we could come prepared to be able to have those balances after each award is made and support the dialogue so we can move somewhat quickly without our chairwoman having to add them.
She'd like a live spreadsheet.
We could try to do that on the screen this time. Okay, so between the ones that we just awarded, which goes all through page 1, down to the Park Theater Foundation, $580,000 and $580,550. I have 25,005. We left open door. We have 100,000. Oh, I'm sorry. No. We didn't, sorry, I made that number up. Tri-County United Way we left, so that's at 0. We have 25,500, 0, 0, 100,000, 5,400, 32,4, 12, I'm sorry, 17,250, 250, and 50,000 is $480,550. So just looking at the rest of our sheet, if we just leave the numbers the way they were on the sheet, we're still under 1.9 million. Which would leave us about $1 million. Unallocated after we go through all applications.
I guess what I'm looking for is before we start this next round,
Yes,
what is our balance?
of what? As
Dollars that are available.
1.5.
So remaining ARPA apps, we're starting with 1.5,
no, that's not, that
Right.
can't be right. We were at 2.9 million minus
480.
480.
Right.
We're still at 2.4 million.
2.4, thank you. I just want to know the balance. Thanks.
Okay. Okay, so if you go page 4, the City of Glens Falls request is at the top. Supervisor Beatty.
Yeah, good, I think Mr. Dow's still here. Could you refresh my memory from an hour and a half ago? Seems like a long time. You're requesting 250,000. Did you say the city had already committed some to this?
Yeah, the city's committed, but you want me to go to the,
Yeah, please.
Yes,
Thank you.
please.
I don't want to get in trouble.
No, you.
No, we don't want you in trouble.
You gotta get them the merit.
Hey, Amanda,
Yes.
do you think,
Yes, so the answer is that yes, the city has committed $500,000 already of our ARPA funding, the funding that the city got toward this project.
And the total project is how much?
I believe it's 1.1 million, 1.075 or something like that. So
So you've already got 45% of it committed.
roughly, right, yes, right. And then I'm going to ask Beth for the rest.
She's the best. Thank you.
Madam Chairwoman,
I'm sorry, yes.
before we begin a debate and with all due respect to the city of Glens Falls past action, I'd like an opportunity, as this again touches on capital improvements, and I need to dig into the capital improvements. Because during the course of this meeting, as I've reviewed the commentary, it appears that capital improvements is treated differently depending on which category is being applied. So it's going to require a little more time and review to confirm, and I'd prefer to be able to confirm before undertaking the conversation by this committee rather than after on this particular request.
What does the committee want to do with that
It
information?
says on here, support public health.
That was the self-identified category for the
Right.
city.
Correct.
Right, so I think it's a degree of translation might be necessary as we get a closer read of the final rule.
Mr. Agnew?
May I ask a question of Mr. Dowd?
Yes, you may.
Pat, sorry, Pat,
Gotta sit a little closer.
been getting your exercise today.
This is your workout.
Pat, the 500K from the city, was that from the city's ARPA?
Correct,
Do you
yes.
remember, do you recall which category they took it from?
No. No, I don't right off the top of my head.
Do you know if the city attorney had the same questions that Attorney Elman had in terms of it being capital improvement?
My guess would be that she would know. I don't know right off the top of my head, no. And I would hesitate.
So maybe a suggestion might be to go to the city and find, and I'm happy to do this, go to the city and find out the category and what this, and then maybe connect Attorney Elman with city attorney.
I have no problem connecting with the city attorney. My purpose is to represent the county and provide the county a recommendation on this particular topic.
Yep, understood. I guess my thinking here is, since it's both coming from ARPA buckets and thinking about folks looking at it down the road, might not be a bad idea to be in concert on this.
I know with the other one, we did move Heritage Hall forward, correct? With a caveat that the attorney would look into the capital.
That's correct, and that's what I've been doing during most of the meeting.
Okay. Supervisor Wild.
Madam Chair, also, the city of Glens Falls received just about as much ARPA funding, maybe even more than Warren County did. I'm curious if we have any idea what Warren or what the city of Glens Falls has been doing in terms of the allocation of their funds. Because I think of this as serving countywide. Not that Glens Falls isn't deserving of this, but there are other things that we will probably likely want to do. And I'm just curious if there's any sense of what's happening with the city and their $12+ million in ARPA funding. I think it'd be wise for us to consider how they're addressing this also. I know in this one sense we do, it's 500,000, but what about other things? Are they probably doing nonprofits? Are they doing this similar to what we are? It just, to me, it makes sense to kind of look and understand what they're doing so we can support or consider other support needs that we need to do.
I think that's a fair question to ask Mr. Dowd if he's able to address any of that.
Well, again, my job is this much and the city is that. So what I know from my conversations is there's somewhere in the neighborhood of 3.5 or maybe a little bit more million that's gone toward extraordinarily important, highly needed sewer upgrades, sewer water projects. What they specifically are, I honestly can't tell you. I know that the $500,000 as we're talking about is going toward this project. When it comes to the other projects, I know that there's a list that the mayor and the council have that they're going through. What's on it, I don't know. What the process is, I know that they're doing a similar process in terms of reviewing the requests. Are there nonprofits? Our block grant helps a number of the nonprofits. I don't know if they've asked for more money from the ARPA designation that we've gotten or not. So I don't know if that helps, but that's probably the extent of my information.
Supervisor Seaver, yes.
Is it possible to ask the mayor to join us at our next committee meeting when we schedule it and hear a little bit more about that collaborative partnership? I do think it's one that has potential, and just looking back at even just our last tabling as it related to assisting those in our community that are economically disadvantaged, those that are homeless, those that are hungry. I would say that I think asking and recognizing the request from our county attorney here for more time would be appropriate.
And if I could just clarify, there's a clear difference under the treasury rule with what a municipality can do with their funds versus for themselves as a municipality. And Warren County has taken a number of actions regarding using portions of the ARPA funds for Warren County purposes and what the municipality can do in conveying those funds to other groups. So in this situation, if the city of Glens Falls applied ARPA funds for capital improvements within the city, that's very similar to uses that Warren County has used ARPA funds for capital improvements within the county. This is an application for Warren County to designate ARPA funds not for its own capital improvements, but for capital improvements proposed by the city. And that's different in kind than whether or not the city of Glens Falls has already allocated funds for this particular capital improvement. So I appreciate the time to dig deeper into that different issue of the county using ARPA funds to fund a capital improvement by another municipality, not itself.
All right, well, with that, I can certainly reach out, Pat, let the mayor know that we would like someone, mayor or someone from the mayor's office to come to the next meeting.
Be glad to.
And in the meantime, we'll have the city attorney do some more research for our purposes.
Somebody smarter than you, Pat.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people smarter than me, Dennis.
All right. What's the feeling of the committee as continuing on? Do you want to keep going or do you want to take a break? Okay, let's take a short break, then we'll carry on.
What are we gonna carry on doing?
We have more applications. Can we take a break? Amanda? Sure. Just, okay, thank you. Fine. Now Frank's leaving.
Yeah, we can see you're here.
You still have 6. But you're on live right now.
We are live? Okay. All right, so I just want to put the screen up, the spreadsheet up on the screen so everyone can see and double check what we did. So I'm not the only one. Gina, I assume you're keeping track of all these too, okay? Big Brothers Big Sisters, Open Door, we left that one, 100,000 for Queensberry. All right, my plan for this next section is just to walk through some of these. I'm gonna skip over other ones. If you really feel strongly about one, you're gonna have to speak up. I will say Jim Siplon wanted to speak to the EDC application, so we're gonna leave those for today. We're gonna skip over those for today. This one right here, Warren County OES COVID-19 PPE. Could I have a motion for that one?
You want to fund that?
Mhm.
I'll make a motion if somebody can tell me what it is.
Warren County OES. Yes,
Did you just say Warren County OES?
yes.
I'm completely opposed to using ARPA dollars for this. Is this for the COVID masks and hand sanitizers and all things that should come out of our regular general fund that we have a responsibility to protect our employees? And I thought we talked about this last time and going back to Anne Marie and asking why can't she take this out of a regular budget?
Gloves, face shields, gowns, N95s and masks.
Yeah.
You don't want to fund this out of ARPA?
Why are we? We had an immediate need back in 2020 and 2021. We had money in the budget for it. We were able to submit to the federal government for reimbursement for all these things. We have gotten support from the state and all of this, and it's a few $1,000s that should be paid out of out of Anne Marie's budget. And she doesn't have in our budget. She should come to the county and say, I wasn't able to cover this and this is what it was for, but it's for our Warren County employees.
So you want to cross it off?
Yeah, I'm opposed to using ARPA dollars. And I think we should go right back to, we made a referral last time, criminal justice and public safety to look at this.
Jana, do you remember that? Okay, all right, well, do you want to make that now?
I thought we already, didn't we way back at the beginning, put money aside for the county to pay for COVID related expenses?
We did.
And when we have,
But it was like a dollar amount for things like that. And then we did a separate one for like technology, because there's another one for the, but we did that. We already did that. Yeah.
That phone one might be the one that you're thinking about. That we referred. There's a separate application for the phone
No,
system, push notifications.
I know we addressed
Okay.
that because we talked about how that was addressed in committee and that was approved through committee.
Okay.
But we took this issue and said, go back to criminal justice with it. I mean, maybe I'm.
Okay, can we just have that be clear then to a motion to take this off? We're not gonna.
I'll make a motion to send it back over for the second time to the criminal justice and public safety committee.
Okay,
Unless everyone here disagrees and they want to pay for this out of ARPA dollars, but it's a county expense, it's county responsibility. I don't know why it's in front of us.
okay, I'll take that as a motion to refer it to public safety.
I'll second it.
Okay, Dennis seconds it. If we already did this, we're gonna do it again.
Great.
All those in favor,
Can vote again.
please say aye.
All right.
Aye, opposed. Okay, Gina, let's make sure this is off. Okay, or bump down to the referred section.
We did the same thing with the public defenders last time too,
Yes, that's correct.
and the sewer line. Yeah, why are these on here?
If we send it to public offenders, we didn't get anything back?
No, I spoke
No,
about it
yeah.
after I'm sorry.
Go
I'm
ahead,
just
Supervisor
jumping in. I
Seaver.
apologize.
You're fine.
We took the ones that, when we spent significant time throwing them over to the appropriately referring them to the committees that there's potential funding for. And we did make a referral over to public safety and criminal justice for the public defender. I don't know if they talked about it this past week, but I do know I spoke with Greg and explained why I thought it was something that should be considered through criminal justice. Plus, there's a ton of oils money that comes in through that
Okay,
for grant dollars. So
so are we taking that off?
We already did. That one we definitely, I recall referring appropriately as Supervisor Seaver mentioned.
Okay.
So Gina, let's make sure that row gets bumped down to the referred. Okay. And the sewer line,
Yeah.
Which sewer one?
there were two, just give me a second. This is on page 4. There are two from Montcalm.
That's a no.
Did we refer them to someone?
Madam
We did.
Chairman, we referred them to your committee, to the committee. And I'm looking forward to that meeting as well, yes.
I believe the committee's name is the Septic Inspection Upon Transfer Law Committee.
Mhm.
And if I could jump in, I did follow up on those applications because they were a little bit complicated. Basically, Montcalm Apartments over exit 19. There's about 200 plus units, 400 or so residents of I think it's rent controlled property. So that does provide affordable housing for our town and region. They have an underperforming wastewater treatment facility on site. The applicant was looking for support to either refurbish parts of their wastewater treatment plant and then eventually ask for funding to connect the sewer main that would go underneath Interstate 87 and connect to the main on Route 9 and then eventually into the Glens Falls wastewater treatment plant. So they were basically just figuring out, hey, ARPA funding might be a good way to do this. I did reach out to the applicant and I spoke to a few people at the town of Queensbury and basically reading the application. One of them was contingent upon a Northern Borders Regional Commission grant, which didn't materialize. And the other one was for a more modest amount of money to help refurbish the wastewater treatment plant. I looked at it and I said, this would help address the housing needs we have in Warren County. It would seem like a shame to not sort of at least consider how to offset these infrastructure costs for, critical housing. But the way the application was structured didn't show much match from the town of Queensbury. So I did reach out to the town of Queensbury to see if they could represent this as a way where it was a little bit more of a partnership between the county and the town and the applicant, so that there was, not, maybe it wasn't completely taken off the table, because as written, it certainly doesn't seem too attractive from this, based on what we've been funding so far. But if there was a way to move forward, even with a token amount, but I haven't heard anything back from those two as far as making a partnership to make this request work. So that's where we're at with it. I just wanted to say that because I didn't think the septic inspection upon transfer committee would really have too much to offer to that conversation.
We don't really have funding for that type of project, but in any case, I appreciate you very much talking to them, because I know there are some other people who have submitted applications and we haven't said anything to them one way or another, and they're kind of wondering what's happening. So I'm glad that, Ethan, Gina, myself, and others are reaching out, and I appreciate that very much. Supervisor Seaver, you had your hand up.
Yes, thank you for that follow-up. Again, I'm so glad we could find a position within the planning department to help with all of this follow-up and prepare us for these meetings. My concern here is similar to the EMS. If you ask Dennis Dickinson, if you ask Frank Thomas, do they need help in their communities as it relates to issues like these, or Edna Frazier, I guarantee you they will all say, boy, I didn't know this was an eligible use, or it was, I didn't think we were going to look at it, or how can our town and our community also benefit from this? So if we're going to look at this down the road, I think we need to do it in the same way we just looked at EMS. And perhaps the septic committee does have a role within that to kind of look at where are there additional dollars? What would the recommendations be? How do we help? If we're going to throw the deadline out and say, boy, we're going to look at EMS, then maybe we should throw it out for, all of our other municipalities who I'm sure need funding to help with their sewer, septic, and all their other needs that qualify under this, and housing. Just a thought.
Knowing that it has been referred over to a committee, I'm sure that my committee will meet soon and discuss this.
Great.
Yeah, I didn't say.
Hold on. Yes. Yes, Montcalm.
Refer to your committee.
Yes.
Okay.
Supervisor Wild.
Madam Chair, if we look at the application, they do talk about the possibility of 450 residents being displaced. that's a significant impact to our community economically, as well as to those people that are
Yeah,
being housed there.
that was the premise upon which I followed up on it. I mean,
What's the
also,
timing?
it's complicated enough that it'd be worth reaching out to the town of Queensbury and the applicant if this is something that they want to take seriously for deliberation, and whether it's within the ARPA committee or not. And there's other more appropriate committees to discuss it. It's a topic worth considering for the fact that it does touch on both infrastructure and housing. The development potential on exit 19 from a county perspective, if it was served by sewer, is significant. So there are countywide impacts to this sort of project.
Beth,
Are we talking about the sewer line extension or the wastewater treatment plant refurbishment? 'Cause
Mine-
We're talking about both like.
Yeah.
wrap up.
Yeah.
So what is the actual validity of the sewer line extension? Was that the MVRC grant?
Yeah.
That didn't get funded?
Right. And
I just want to
so that,
reiterate, these two both were already referred away from our committee.
right, yeah.
Timeline's my concern. With ARPA money.
As far as getting the project done in time.
Well, I think the onus would be on the applicant to make a compelling case to this committee. Otherwise, it could be referred back to the appropriate county committee to talk about, right?
Supervisor Beatty,
I strongly feel that the town of Queensbury should be addressing this first and foremost. It's 450 residents in the town of Queensbury. And if we get their full commitment or partial commitment, strong commitment that they see this fit as to be funded, I think then this ARPA committee could see to assisting where we could. But it's got, in my opinion, and I'm a Queensbury representative, it's a town of Queensbury issue. It's 450 people. That's a lot of people in any town in Queensbury, and it should be addressed by supervisor from Queensbury and the town board. First and foremost, that's my opinion.
on the topic of water, sewer, broadband infrastructure, we have a request from an individual. This person lives in Queensbury and I'm pretty sure requested money from the septic inspection program, but they don't live close enough to the water to qualify for the funding. So they put in a request for ARPA and I'd like to give them an answer one way or another. The same with the other individual request. Supervisor Beatty?
Yeah, on my, when I scored and read through all the applications, I said specifically refer to the town of Queensbury and to see if they had some type of program or ARPA money that could assist her. That's, I give her a lot of credit. She took the initiative to come looking for funding wherever she can, and I appreciate that. But in my opinion, that should be a town issue. Again,
Is that a motion to refer her application to the town of Queensbury?
yes, which I had written on my, on her application, correct? Yes.
Which one are we talking about?
This is for Ms. Taylor.
Ms. Taylor, top of page 5.
Well, there's two of them there.
This one is Jessica Taylor requested $11,000 for her water sewer infrastructure project.
What, yeah. You got, Rohit Palmetier.
Not that one. We'll go to that one next.
Okay.
So we have a motion to refer to town of Queensbury. Did I have a second? Do we have a second? I'll second it. Discussion.
Does Queensbury have money? For sewer project like that?
Is there someone from Queensbury who would like to address that?
They've got ARPA money. Significant.
Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you. To address the supervisor from Lake George's question, reviewing the budget, all I can tell you there is that I don't see an allocation for this type of assistance directly to taxpayers. But I have inquired with two of the councilmen who sit on the board. I hope that we are formally sending these over with a complete application and just if we're going to look at partnering with municipalities, I think it's appropriate for our committee to know what they've done with their ARPA dollars and alternative resources that they may have. So if it comes back where, it is something that they feel is appropriate for this, we should have a detailed explanation on those types of questions.
Okay.
So Gina, if this passes, can you please make sure that the full application gets to the appropriate person at Town of Queensberry? Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
Sorry, we're talking about the Jessica Taylor application. We're going to give one individual $11,000.
We refer you to the Town of Queensberry.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll call it again. All those in favor of referring this application to the Town of Queensberry, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries. Got it, Gina? Thank you. And we'll take that one off, move it down into the referred section of the spreadsheet. Thank you. Let's go to the other individual application. She's a little bit higher up. Miss Palmetier put in an application for $5,000 for premium pay. Do I have a motion on that particular application?
Before you ask for a motion, can I legally provide an opinion that the committee should not act on that application?
Let's just see if we have any. I would like to give her an answer one way and another.
Why do you want us to act on it?
Because the county is not authorized under ARPA to give her money for the reasons stated in her application.
There you go. There's your answer.
So do I have a motion that we will not be funding this application?
I'll make a motion that based on the attorney's recommendation that we not support this application.
Point of order.
Yes, Supervisor Sieber?
I don't recall us doing this for other applications that we've decided not to fund or put aside or whatever. Are we going to make it a practice to do a motion not to fund for every application?
I don't believe there's any rule against making such a motion.
There may not be a rule. I'm just asking in consistency's sake, are you going to do this for every application you choose not to fund?
I understand what you're saying, and I think that I'm not going to make a rule that says one way or another, we're doing that for every application or not.
Madam Chair.
Co-chair, just a minute, please.
Go ahead, Craig.
The fact that we're referring applications to somebody else and not taking any action on them is doing essentially the same thing.
May I? We vote on, it's actually a point of order about the protocol here, but you ruled on it, that's fine. The referrals are formal referrals so that other entities officially are getting correspondence from us about the dialogue, the discussion, and the resources that we feel may or may not be available. And then an opportunity for it to come back, should there not be funding. I understand that there's multiple applications here that we have decided not to fund. If we're deciding not to fund without a formal referral, I just ask that you're consistent and you make a motion and take a vote to not fund all of those in the same consistent manner. That's all. Good government. Thank you.
For the record, I don't believe there are any other ones that we've officially said, no, we're not going to fund. This one, we're receiving advice from our council that we are not to fund this.
That's what I was gonna say.
We did it the last. A motion not to fund? No. There was no motion, but we decided not. Right.
Okay, so,
Because they didn't fit.
Right.
all right, so to be consistent, we just won't make any decision one way or another. We won't make a decision to fund. Yes, Supervisor Sieber.
Chairwoman, previously you did a consensus of the committee not to fund. And with this particular applicant, I feel like you're calling them out to do a motion not to fund. I don't think that's the intent that you have by doing that, but I could imagine how that might feel as an Warren County employee. And I just ask for sensitivity and consistent practices.
I understand. So I will ask whoever made the motion, Dennis, to just remove your motion from the table and we will move on. We have consensus that we are not to fund this.
I don't understand all the nonsense. Do we make a motion?
Point of order. It's not
What?
nonsense, Dennis. Supervisor. It's not nonsense. There's a reason I'm asking for this.
Your point is taken.
Point of order.
Supervisor Dickinson.
Oh, another one.
They need to address the chair, not individual members of the committee.
Okay, your point is well taken. Supervisor Dickinson. Please finish your comment. And then we're gonna move
I
on.
have no problem with a resolution. You definitely should make a decision and have a resolution to back you up. Call this person and tell them they don't qualify.
I understand that, but I think we have, like we've done before, consensus of the committee based upon our attorney's advice.
So you make a resolution and you have your consensus.
I'm gonna leave it on at that and just move on.
Is there not a resolution on the floor?
Do you
And-
still, you have a motion on the floor, Supervisor Dickinson?
I thought so. Did I make a motion?
Is there a second?
There is no second, but you don't need a second at committee.
That's fine. I just wanted to make sure if I needed to go check with someone else. Are you willing to withdraw your motion, Supervisor Dickinson?
No.
Okay. Mr. Agnew,
So I think Supervisor Dickinson is absolutely right that we need to follow the attorney's advice, but I also think Supervisor Seaver has a point. I'm concerned that this will feel like the committee calling out this employee as opposed to not having an emotion on the record. And then advising whoever it is that needs to talk to this employee to say to them in private, your application did not qualify for legal reasons. Rather than having on the record. I luckily today, there's no reporters here, right? But last time.
they could be watching this.
So, so I appreciate Supervisor Seaver's point, and I think Supervisor Dickinson.
I
is
will,
absolutely right to
I'll
follow attorney's advice.
retract my resolution.
Very much appreciated,
Ray, say anything. that-
Co-Chair Dickinson. Okay, moving on. Supervisor Thomas,
Well, it's already on the record. I mean.
it's fine. Hold on, it's fine that we said as a consensus, we're not going to fund it at attorney's advice. What does concern me is that if we pass a motion, there will be a board resolution saying, no, why would, we don't need that.
Right.
And she doesn't need that.
I mean,
This individual. So let's move on.
everything in context, right? And I think the primary reason why you would look at the next request is sort of related to that for premium pay. The
Which
CSEA.
one? Oh,
I mean, wouldn't that fall, it's sort of redundant with that request, like, is that? not
it
right?
is. I think that we've pretty much had consensus that we would not be funding that one either. Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you, Madam Chairwoman. If it would be permitted, may I ask the county attorney to also provide advice on that particular request so it's documented on the record as well?
Which ones are we looking at?
I'm sorry, point of order. Supervisor must address the chair, according to my colleague from Queensbury.
I'm sure.
They're co-chair, you're right.
It's the CSEA application,
One right above it.
the one right above it that Mr. Gaddy was referring to. If we could get some legal advice on that one on the record as well, it's a very good point
Thank you.
that Supervisor Seaver is making.
I'm sorry, Supervisor from the town of Queensbury. Point of order.
Point well taken.
Let's play. Fine.
Can we please?
Good luck.
Apologize, but if you could, you're asking me to distinguish between the prior application and this particular application?
There's no distinguishment.
Oh, there is. There's a significant difference between the two. The individual, as an individual employee, there's no employee who can qualify directly for an award from this county for premium pay. So an employee cannot apply and put an application in saying, I want premium pay for myself. Just, it's a legal non-starter under the Treasury rule and the commentary. So we can take that and kind of just move that off the table because it has no application or it doesn't apply at all to the request that the committee is now considering for CSEA. The issue with the CSEA is an issue that's come up probably 3 or 4 times since I've started as county attorney. And it goes back to the limitation that municipalities have under the gift and loans clause for the New York Constitution. And a long string of case law decisions to include comptroller opinions that this county has received that we are not authorized to pay retroactively for services previously rendered by county employees outside of a limited exception for collective bargaining agreements and the like. So the underlying issue with premium pay is different than the prior application because the county is not authorized to retroactively pay under the New York Constitution for services that were rendered during the COVID-19 period. That only applies for county employees. It does not limit this committee's ability to direct ARPA funds to other entities so that, which would be employers, so that those employers can provide premium pay to their employees if they meet the criteria that's set forth for payments of premium pay. And I'm not going to go into those right now because that's not the question.
So we can cross that one off.
So, yeah, it's the same limitation that we had back in January or February of this year when there was a motion to provide 4 weekends of back pay to 2 employees in one of our departments. And it was clearly brought to the board's attention that per conversations with the comptroller's office, the county of Warren would not and could not retroactively pay for services previously rendered in a prior pay period. They can pay going forward, but they cannot pay going backward. Premium pay under ARPA is directly connected to hours worked and time worked during the pandemic. It's not a forward-looking or prospective payment into the future for services rendered. It's limited only to retroactive. And while the Treasury rule says recipients can pay recipient pay, it's my legal opinion that we are restricted in that ability because of the gift and loans provision of the New York Constitution as it's consistently applied when the issue of retroactive pay is presented.
Supervisor Seaver. I'm sorry. My colleague from the town of Queensbury.
Thank you, Chairwoman. I'd like to direct these comments to our county attorney, if I may.
Yes, you may.
Thank you, Chairwoman. County Attorney Elman, I appreciate that detailed response. I think it's really important that it's in the record for both the individual and the CSCA to see what those limitations are and why. And of course, we're a little different than a lot of other states where we do have that provision in our state law. I appreciate the time and the effort spent on the research of it. And I would just ask at this point, whether it be your co-chair or you as a co-chair or our planning department, who will be providing correspondence formally to these 2 entities for applications so that they can refer back to this dialogue, particularly on video. It might be helpful for them to know exactly why it can't be considered.
I think that would be appropriate to come from the co-chairs, some correspondence. I will work with co-chair Dickinson on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So with that, I will ask Gina to bump that row down. And we have consensus on that one, I believe. Given that we have consensus on that one. And I do also see in our sheet this recycling facility, which was also referred to Public Works, correct? Everyone remembers that we did that? Yes.
Yeah.
So Gina, could you move that row down as well? It is Warren County Department of Public Works / Solid Waste Central Recycling Facility.
What are you moving that to, Claudia?
I'm just gonna have Gina move that row down in the sheet because we did refer it to Public Works for consideration.
They have been in discussion about solid waste. We have some serious input from private organizations that are interested in solid waste. They've come up with a plan that the Department of Public Works doesn't have the money to institute that plan, and that's why they made this request. It's an important issue. What they're trying to do is segment, departmentalize our solid waste so that we can recoup funds from those things which are valuable. It's a great plan.
It is a good plan, and I think what was mentioned previously by my colleague from Queensberry is that some of these that we refer, if it turns out there's not funding, they could come back to ARPA. If
Well,
they
you
can come back in
Send
a,
it to them, they'll
timeline.
send it right back.
yeah. Well, we'll see what happens. Ethan, Mr. Gaddy.
Hi, I think this is a great project. You know, the planning department, you know, we wrote the grant for the organics management plan. From a climate perspective and a financial standpoint, I think it's really important that we can start making money off of our solid waste. It's an awesome idea. I would like to see, as an ARPA committee member, more information beyond the application before fully considering the $1.4 million project. And I'm sure it's a good idea. I'm familiar with, you know, I've followed what they've been doing. I just, in terms of being responsible to having a facility that will be a liability for taxpayers conceivably for a long period of time, I think we need to just, and maybe I missed the meeting that they presented at. So, but I would just like to see some more information, have more time to look at it before making a decision on it.
So why don't we send it back and ask them to come in and make a presentation? Or just ask them to make.
They might have already. I defer to anyone here to.
I don't remember.
Is anyone at the public? Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you, Chairwoman, co-chairs. I am not a member of the Public Works Committee, but I did attend that meeting. I did hear them say that they wrote the issue with their ARPA application in that committee. And if I'm recalling it correctly, it was partial funding that they were looking for. They were looking for some money from the county and some money from ARPA, and they made the comment if they didn't get the money from ARPA, they wouldn't be able to complete the project. On 1014, we did refer this over to Public Works, so I'm sure it's already on one of their agendas that perhaps our clerk can tell us about. But I agree with you, co-chair, that if there's a way to have that dialogue, you could do a joint meeting, or you can have them come back down the road and talk more about what those needs are. But it sounds like if the county isn't in a position to assist, and ARPA, that they needed both legs to make.
Correct.
But I am correct. Okay. So I would have concerns.
So let's set up a meeting, have them come in.
Yeah, I think it's a great project.
Yeah.
You know, I would love to support it. I just want to make sure. It's important.
Supervisor Thomas.
My comment at the DPW committee, and also when I read the application, is the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Warren County had this facility and had all this equipment 20 years ago, and they sold all of it. And here we are 20 years later proposing to do the same thing over again. So I guess my feeling at this point, without more information and more details, is you're insane.
Mr. Dickinson, could you please work with the other committee to get someone here to speak to us and get some more information?
I will do. A lot has happened in 20 years, Frank.
Thank you. All right, I believe the next one, the smartphone app, we did refer that one as well. Over to
It's already voted on.
somewhere. Okay, the next two on the sheet are both child care centers, and we had referred those to the Southern Adirondack Child Care Network. It turns out that they have restrictions on the funding that we gave them, so that it is only for in-home daycare centers. And I know my colleague from Queensberry had concerns about this. They do not feel that they would have the funding to pivot unless they were directed to do so. So I would like this committee to reconsider funding for these two applications for childcare centers, not to come out of the money that we already allocated to the Southern Adirondack Child Care Network. Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you. I would be happy to make that motion and see if we could get on the floor for discussion. I do have an item for discussion on this one.
Which one are you moving?
I'm back.
or both? Or,
I'll move both.
so if you look, the Small Tales Child Care Center requested 5,000 and J Labs requested 30,000.
Yes, I'll move. Both.
At those amounts or the?
Yeah. At the amounts they request now, I'll explain why.
Okay.
Discussion, if I may.
Yes, you may. Go ahead. We need,
I
I would
don't
like
need
a second.
but
If
I
we,
would like a second.
Mr. Agnew.
Thank you.
So just to be clear, it's those two applications at the amounts they requested. Okay, thank you.
This is why I'm passionate about these two applications. You all may recall that we spent a lot of time as an ARPA committee when we had Southern Adirondack Daycare come in, and we asked them, you know, if it's a center or a home, how do they feel about it? Could it be an and or situation so that we could have provided this funding to someone that perhaps wants to have a center versus an at-home? We also talked about the federal funding that came through to assist in the at-home daycares. So the committee eventually, I believe, if I'm remembering it correctly, had said and or was fine. We just, you know, talked to Southern Adirondack. It went to the full board, and the full board decided to debate this issue. And they debated it to the point where they removed the and or. And so we can't help fund them through the previous funding, because even though this committee said, yeah, sure, our board said, oh, no. And now we're back talking about the same intent that we had way back when, which was the priority to help the childcare, and particularly wanting additional centers, so knowing that it's very, very difficult to find affordable childcare, both at home and in centers. So I think this is a modest amount, and it should be one that we're considering, since our intent previously was to do that. And I hope that the full board doesn't decide otherwise, once again, on a matter of an and or, which I believe was not, it shouldn't have got caught up in what it got caught up in.
Supervisor Dickinson.
I'm very familiar with Small Tales. I have two alumni from that. It's basically preschool. It's in Warrensburg. They do an excellent job. I don't see the need to pay them anything. J Labs, I'm not familiar with at all. Yeah, somebody will have to tell me what they do.
We'll come back to that in just a second. I saw hands over here, and Supervisor Wild.
Supervisor Seaver's point. I think we did in establishing our draft priorities, vulnerable population childcare is super important for getting our workforce back. I think with these two applications, if you look at the detail of them, they're two different things. One is for supporting an existing daycare center to help cover with losses from the pandemic. And then the other one is for the establishment of a new business. And it fits into a gray area between, is this going to be for under the category of, all right, this is our priority of childcare for workforce support, or is it going to be for the establishment or expansion of new business? So if you look at it from the perspective of establishing a new business, I would be, you have to, I suppose, be a little bit, put a higher degree of scrutiny to the viability of it. In terms of, hey, does this look like a fully conceived idea? Is supporting this with ARPA funds going to be the best way to address the childcare issue, or are there alternative approaches that we consider as a committee? So regardless of the nature of all these applications, if we're trying to address the issue of childcare, is this request for $30,000, is this going to be effective at meeting that end?
If you guys will give me a second, I do have a question about this for our council, because we, under small businesses, we were advised that we could not fund brand new businesses. So I just want to understand.
Certainly, this is an application that the county and this committee can fully fund with ARPA funds. However, not as it's been designated on the spreadsheet. The proper designation, I believe, would be it would be to address negative economic impacts, but it's not to assist small businesses. It's for the assistance of households and individuals, and specifically childcare. Again, we have these buckets, and one bucket that we have had few opportunities to prepare resolutions and contracts for is the first one that in the system, in the list of rules, which is assistance to individuals and households. Southern Adirondack Childcare was one of those examples where it wasn't assistance to a nonprofit or to a small business. It was a way to assist individuals specifically with the identified need of childcare under the rule. And those rules, again, in that commentary are different because it's a different bucket, it's a different category than the small business or nonprofit categories. And specifically in the commentary, it directly states that the eligible uses for childcare can include new or expanded services, increasing access to services, efforts to bolster support or preserve existing providers and services, and similar activities, all in the area of childcare, because childcare was designated on a list of very specific needs for individuals and families because of the pandemic. So that's my long way of putting on the record that and trying to clarify there's not an inconsistency between the prior statement of new startups as small businesses being funded as compared to this entity, which appears to be a new business being funded, but for the purpose of childcare to assist households and individuals. So that would be the category to consider this under if you were going to fund the application.
I had Supervisor Wild.
Madam Chair, thank you. Just for the committee's reference, the Economic Growth Committee met this past week, and we did have a discussion with Lynn Stickles from the Southern Adirondack Child Care Network. She did talk about the difference between home-based child care and center-based time care, child care. And the big difference that my takeaway is that centers are very difficult to maintain. The regulations are significantly different. The costs are significantly different. But that doesn't mean that they weren't working towards that. It's just that they felt at the time the fastest way to add capacity in our community was to do it in home-based. I suggest that if we do decide to move forward with supporting some of the centers, that we also include the Southern Adirondack Child Care Network to help make sure that they get the support that they need to be successful. So they could do both, but it's more effective for them on a short-term basis to make something happen in the home-based system, as I mentioned. So you can hear more if you want to go back to the YouTube and watch that committee meeting. It's more towards the end of the meeting, but she did a great job. It's probably only 10 minutes worth of your time. And that's all I have. Thank you, Chairwoman.
Thank you. Supervisor Dickinson, my colleague from Queensbury had her hand up for a while. Okay, I'm gonna go to, and then I'll go to you.
Thank you. Co-chair from Lake George. I heard you say they're doing well. They don't need it. And it might be true that they're doing well and you're familiar with them. But I think during COVID, almost every single childcare provider felt COVID impact them significantly. And we've lobbied, NISAC has lobbied at the state level to try to look at some of the changes of reimbursement rates when it's county funded daycare, and you know how different it is if someone doesn't show up if they're receiving daycare assistance. We saw all of our dollars increase significantly from the county, and so much so that the state gave counties more dollars to be able to help to pay with home-based and center-based daycare for people that needed it and met that income threshold. They even increased the income threshold, recognizing that this was a really important issue. My suggestion would be, if you would allow me to modify my motion, is to take a total dollar amount of 50,000 and ask that it be awarded to the Southern Adirondack Child Care Center to assist centers in being developed or being retained, to help with that provision of training and with licensing and equipment and cleaning supplies. They do assist small centers as well as home-based. So they're already doing it. It's just that in our resolution before, the board decided just to limit it to home-based. So now I think appropriately so, we're looking at centers and helping centers. And I know that they had shared with us that they're able to assist with that. So I would ask for consideration not to make these individual awards, but to ask that they work with the Southern Adirondack Child Care Center who provides this type of support. And I think that might be a better route to go and a little cleaner of a route through the county attorney's office. Or if he's saying no.
I want to go to Dennis.
I appreciate that, Co-Chair. I like your idea, Rachel. I don't know where you came up with the 50,000. They've asked for 30 and for 5, but
Can I answer?
yes.
Thank you, Co-Chair. I came up with that because I believe there's probably other centers that would need a little bit of help. And I just thought that way, if they did apply directly to them, that it would provide some additional resources for the limited amount of centers or those that might be trying to get established in the northern parts of the county. We've talked about that need for a long time. So I thought it would be helpful to have that be a little more flexible than just those two individuals.
I would feel more comfortable if we responded to Small Tales with some dollar amount individually. And then I wouldn't hesitate to do more to Southern Adirondack childcare.
May I ask you a
Yeah.
question, Co-Chair?
Yeah.
Would you also then make that consideration for the other applicant as well? Both are looking at responding to the need of childcare.
Well, you said if we gave it to Southern Adirondack, they'd take care of the new business.
I don't know if their practice is to do that in full or in part, but I'm trusting that they have a process in place because they've talked to us about supporting them. I just think, given the fact that there's only 2 applicants under this to provide some funding to one and none to the other might not make a lot of sense.
And I suggest that we give the 2 applicants the full amount they asked for.
Okay.
Childcare is very high on my
Okay.
list of things we need to do in order for people to be able to survive.
May I, Co-Chair, then ask you, would you also consider putting an additional amount aside for the Southern Adirondack Child Care Network to help with centers? I
Well,
I agree with you that it's so important we provide childcare assistance.
then I would suggest that we give them an additional 15,000.
Let me just, can I please just manage this process a little bit? We had a motion on the table to fund each of those fully. You made a motion to amend to do the 50,000. Thank you.
Withdraw that at this.
Thank you. So I still have on the table a motion for full funding of the 2 applications in front of us. Mr. Gaddy.
May I comment?
Yes,
I-
that's why we're here.
Yeah, the committee procedure makes it kind of difficult to deliberate things in a coherent manner. But just for a moment, I think what we're trying to do is support Small Tales for their fully funded amount and then look at JLabs not as a direct application, but as the idea of supporting childcare centers, because our previous funding for childcare just went to in-home daycare, right? So instead of on the fly, because there's going to be I know there's going to be a lot of considerations administratively and legally with the final rule. Do we put aside a lump sum of money to address the issue of childcare, recognizing that we need to support childcare centers, do our homework, and then come back and as a committee form a coherent approach to doing this as opposed to just doing it on the fly with resolutions?
Supervisor Wild had his hand up.
Yeah, Madam Chair, I think we're on the right track, but what I would propose, if we do want to see JLabs get funded, I would still recommend that we go through the Southern Adirondack Child Care Network and just point it that those numbers, those are for those organizations, and make sure that we have some oversight in terms of what they're doing and it fits into the long-range growth of what that Southern Adirondack Child Care Network can do.
Okay, I know the county attorney was waving at me earlier about some legal advice about how we do this. Either a direct fund or through Southern Adirondack Child Care Network, who we already have a contract with presumably. Could you advise us, please?
Well, this would be a new contract under a new resolution. I just wanted to suggest that we avoid turning Southern Adirondack Child Care into a subrecipient, where they're then distributing larger amounts of funding to entities that want to come into existence like a J Lab, as compared to the county directly funding that to J Lab. And we could certainly make, if they're willing to be, Southern Adirondack a subrecipient with a pot of money that they would then decide what entities are going to be created as new centers. Or in the alternative, if they're going to be doing kind of like what they're doing with my understanding from their presentation with home-based, which is advising, consulting, providing some support in particular areas to get these home-based centers over the finish line as compared to start to finish plans of how to open a new center. I guess that's what I'm a little fuzzy on, because which of those we're doing depends on how this gets structured. There's a big difference between consulting and aiding and assisting and providing funds for a business, a childcare business to basically ramp up, which is what J Labs appears to be wanting to do from their application.
So I'm hearing you say that it's your advice is to leave the applications funding an individual applications. Do you have any advice though for this? The J Labs is a brand new business. So is there anything that you could build?
That's not what I said. I asked that the committee decide which of those routes they want to go. It's not my position to tell the committee which one's better or worse. One is going to be a lot more administrative work for planning through the subrecipient route. That's, you give Southern Adirondack a lump of money and the direction to say, go create, fund new centers, because that's what J Lab's application is. It's a new center. That is, I think, markedly different than we're going to give you a pot of money so you can consult, assisting as well as other centers that are looking to come to life in our community. So
Yeah.
Mhm,
those are two different things for sure.
Supervisor Wild, then I'll come to you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just went through the application again really fast for J Labs. I think there's a distinction between a center and a home-based. I don't see this as being a center. I don't see any numbers, but it may be home-based because they're talking about property construction and renovation of
Can I
like
stop you? Can I stop
$7,000.
you? What Lynn said the other day was that home base is only if it's within the home where the person lives, the
Okay.
provider.
So this isn't going to be where they live.
No.
Okay.
I sent an email this morning with additional details from the applicant.
Sorry, didn't see it.
That's okay. I may have sent it last night, but it was late. And she did say that she is looking for space in Queensbury that would be old commercial space. This is not a home.
Okay.
Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you, co-chair. I'd like to leave the resolution in front of you as it is, or the motion in front of you for consideration as it is, to fund the two entities that have asked under the, correct me if I'm wrong, county attorney, the household and individuals for the impact, the negative economic impact for households and individuals for childcare. But I would like this committee to consider the latter part of what our county attorney said. We used and partnered with the Adirondack Southern Daycare to help entities get up to speed with licensing and how to have an at-home daycare and provide that. And they did a scoring application. They didn't actually award money for new startup, but they helped many people that were applying for that assistance. I think they could do it in the same way with centers in how we had initially intended, with a small amount of money, but not be a subrecipient. So I think that's something that if you want to talk to that on the Southern Daycare about, as you've noted about other areas, we may have a few dollars at the end of this process to hear from them and see if it's something that could help with centers moving forward. But we have two applicants that did apply. I do think their applications are worthy. I think they fall within that category that's been reclarified for us, and they're relatively small amounts. And honestly, we need all the help in the world of childcare, reliable, safe childcare that we can get. And by partnering with both avenues, it would be helpful.
just to manage the process, though, you have your your motion on the table for the two, and then we would come back and talk about a
Mhm.
separate funding for additional money for Southern Adirondack to assist consulting, not a funnel through of money.
Right, in the same way that they did the at home, which is what we approved. So they did that with the at home. They didn't make additional reward, they provided in the way that our county attorney had explained. Which makes it easier in terms of not having a sub-recipient. It makes it easier for the planning and the reporting process, and it also helps that category where we have a gap because we didn't do any and/or center or home-based. We just did home-based. So I'm attempting to close the
Yeah,
gap.
yeah.
But for purposes of what we're talking about, I hope that this board recognizes the impact of childcare and supports these two very minor awards.
Any further discussion on the motion in front of us? Mr. Gaddy?
I would be more comfortable if we separated small tails from J Labs and then separated the other thing to have this pot to talk about,
Sure.
put into a support for centers. We will need to talk to Southern Adirondack Child Care Network about their capacity. We will have to think about some legal and administrative considerations too. But yeah, childcare is critically important. I mean, even with Lynn's work that she did to establish even just 2 in-home childcare centers that, let's just say you get 12 slots established, that's 12 working families in Warren County that can actually go back to work. So that's even in-home stuff is immensely helpful. So yeah, if we could separate the 3, that would be.
But
I'm gonna go to Supervisor Seaver. It's her motion.
I think they fall within the same category though, right? County, can you ask the county attorney will both of those fall in the same category?
I think he said they are assistance to households, individuals / child
Yeah,
care,
excuse me, I was just I thought there was a motion to approve.
both.
Yeah, my
Right.
premise would be, I'd like to approve one, but not the other.
Just a separate vote on each.
Yeah, right. That's all.
Okay. I respect the
I-
process and if that's your preference, I think both are critical to providing meeting the need in our community. And I don't know who seconded it.
I can call the question that we have in front of us.
Who seconded it though? Did they agree to the change?
I think it was,
It was Ray.
Oh,
I'm confused with what we're pulling and putting.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Yeah, so just to clarify, I think,
Well, Ethan, just wait a second. The motion is for both. Are you willing to split them into 2 separate votes?
yeah, at the request of my colleague on the committee, that's his preference.
yeah, 2 separate votes, because I do think that, so as the application explains for small tails, a very clear, defined financial impact for supporting them, whereas J Labs is, we want to, open a center. And I think that is with, like, if someone wants to go out and open a daycare center in Warren County, I think we should find ways to support them. I just think as the application is written, we might be able to exercise a little more. We could talk to Lynn, we could talk to, I know that there's been other organizations that are looking into childcare. Can we connect that person with resources to ensure that they're successful? More than just saying, all right, approve your application, here's the check, go get them, and whatever happens, happens. We want to just, the whole interest is making this more successful.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm fine with separating the 2.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay.
With that understanding, and again, I hope it's something that you'll consider because there is a need and I do think they'll have some services, but it won't help ground up for daycare centers. That's not something Lynn's office is going to be able to do, provide that funding. So this is a very limited pot of money for those. So can we take the vote on the first one and then the second?
I'm gonna call the question. Sorry, Supervisor Wild.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just had one other comment. I was just looking through the J Labs budget again. And listening to Lynn, there are huge expenses that aren't incorporated in this budget. She's talking about $15 an hour for 40 hours a week for employees. She doesn't have any compensation and benefits, insurance. She doesn't have the state licensing activities that have to happen here. I'm all support of trying to make this happen. I just feel that there's some things that are missing in this application for us just to give the money out and say, go make it happen without getting this person the support that they may need to go through all that legislative paperwork and all the issues with insurance and the like. Let's get them some help, but it could be they might need an extra $20,000 to make this happen. And we totally change our outlook in terms of what we want to give them. So I'm not against trying to help. I just want to make sure we're doing it in the most efficient and effective manner as possible. So with that said, I'd like to table this until we speak with Lynn, speak with a couple others, to understand how we can help them be successful, and then make that resolution coming out. the next-
Supervisor Wild.
Yeah.
As a matter of procedure, we did ask, the move-in and the second agreed to split the two. So
Exactly.
I would like to call the motion for the $5,000 for the other for small tails. And then
I support
we can deal with whatever you want to do on the other one.
that. Okay,
Okay?
I'm fair with that.
All right.
Thank you.
Also, as a matter of information for the committee, this person, the applicant, has been in detailed discussions the last several days with Southern Adirondack Child Care Network. I've talked to this person. She is reaching out and she sent in more detailed budget information, which includes those other items that you just mentioned that she was initially missing. Okay, that being said, I'd like to call the question on the $5,000 to Small Tales Child Care Center, 5,000. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Hey, that carries. That one carries. On the J Labs Child Center, we have a motion in front of us for 30,000. And we have a second. Is there discussion on that one?
I have,
Dennis?
you got additional information. Did she ask for more money?
No, she didn't.
She stuck with the 30,000.
She did.
Yep.
If we would like to give her more money, we can go back to and ask her to revise our application.
I'm a little concerned. Michael has made a very good point. If you underfund them, they're gonna have a terrible time trying to get started.
Further discussion? Supervisor Seaver.
Thank you. I
Okay.
appreciate the email that you sent out, and with all due respect to our chair and my colleague from Queensberry, there is a very detailed budget here. She did send that as a supplement. It does talk about what she's looking at. It does include payroll. It does include talking about licensing fees. She has been working with the Southern Adirondack Child Care Center. And if I go back just briefly, bear with me to my email.
While you're looking at that, she did ask me whether or not the committee wanted to see the full budget for operating or just a startup budget. And I made the executive decision to ask her only for the startup costs in her budget to us. So she realizes there will be other expenses, but this is her initial budget for startup.
Did you see a full budget?
She did not provide that. Supervisor Seaver still has the floor. I interrupted her.
No.
Okay, Supervisor Thomas.
Yeah, it looks as though she has budgeted for like 3 months. Startup costs for 3 months.
Ray, Mr. Agnew.
Yes, but I think Supervisor Thomas is exactly right. But she did indicate in her narrative that there's a lot more going on and that we could have a deep budget if we wanted it. So I feel like, I keep coming back to Major Lloyd calling it a childcare desert, and this is a way to get an oasis going. So I'd like to see us get her started.
Ms. Gillis.
Does she have a business plan? I'd like to see her business plan. So if we were gonna loan money, we'd ask for a business plan.
I have not seen it. I don't think. Supervisor Seaver and then
Thank
Supervisor.
you. With respect to the question, Chairwoman, that's been in front of the floor at the moment regarding business plans, I agree that it's always important to see business plans. I don't know, though, if we have required that in many of these other applications of funding and awards, nor do I think we've consistently asked for that information. That being said, I am very encouraged that she's working with the Southern Adirondack Center. She does state in this email that there's only enough childcare for 13 out of 100 children, and for every 100 children, there's only 13 spots, according to the Southern Adirondack Child Care Network. And I know we've heard from our own Department of Social Services that it's just the need is well exceeding what we have available. I'd like to support a small business, but if the committee is more comfortable, perhaps what we could do is hear from both the Southern Adirondack Child Care Network next meeting, as well as J Labs, to talk with us about perhaps she does have a business plan she would like to share with us, but we haven't required that. And I think we need to be very careful about confidential information as well. Childcare is a very competitive business as well. And we certainly appreciate everything that everyone's doing to meet the need. So I'm happy to withdraw if that's the consensus of the committee, and we can certainly have this meeting and ask them to come next month and see if it's something.
I think the committee would appreciate a little more information from her and having Ms. Sickles come and talk to us. So Supervisor Wild next.
Madam Chair, just another additional comment. What I'd like us to do is convey to this applicant that we're very excited that she wants to do this and we want to help her be successful. We just have some questions about whether that funding that she's requesting is appropriate. And maybe we can help this happen even quicker for her. I just wanted.
Conveying
I wanna
support.
make sure we can-
Provide a request if she wants more money.
If she needs it.
Okay. All right, yes. Sorry.
We haven't asked for business plans. We also haven't given any money to a startup.
Right.
So that's about, my concern is, and having seen loan applications come through, I don't think 30,000 is gonna be enough to keep her afloat for as long as she needs to before she gets her feet on the ground. So I think if she needs more money, we should have a conversation and encourage her to ask for it.
Good point.
I can do that. I can reach out to her and I can ask Lynn to have further conversation with us.
And I would encourage,
Yes, Supervisor.
in removing that motion, then I assume my colleague agrees with that. Then just if they're available to come to the meeting and talk with us, I think that's really helpful. If not, if whatever they can provide ahead of time is helpful too, and maybe there is a way to partner together and look at additional resources. But to your point about startup plans and business, I think it's important. And childcare, I wish we made this a priority for centers months ago, and I'm glad we're doing it now, and I hope we allot more money towards it.
All right. With that, I think we accomplished a lot today. Is there any privilege of the floor or public comment? Or further? Yes, Mr. Elman?
I'm hoping that we can finish the referral to the county attorney, which was on premium pay for essential workers, so I can clear that off the docket since we've already talked some about it. Might make sense to address the Warrensburg Emergency Medical Services and the two CWIs rather than restarting that conversation at the next
Okay.
meeting.
Okay, the two CWIs about premium pay, is that what it was? Let's just be sure, because they have several. Okay, it's the second two, the 45,000 and the 420,000. And then Warrensburg, I think, was 75,000. No, I'm sorry, 150,000.
Correct.
Okay, go ahead.
They're all in the same.
Wait, I think Mr. Elman wants to tell us something. I'm sorry. Ray.
You guys can consider those. There's limits on what the employer is allowed to pay to individual employees. So it has to fit into, there's three options, but the two that apply is that any employee who's receiving it cannot be under the FLSA overtime exempt. So salaried employees cannot receive the premium pay, which would hopefully be the majority of the employees for each of the three entities. That to the degree they have salaried employees who otherwise would qualify, the funding would not be, they would not be eligible for premium pay. And the other is a more complicated formula of 150% of the average annual wage for the state or county for all occupations. So there's some limitations on the premium pay if these awards are given as to who the employee can pay it to. But there's no restriction on the committee's ability to consider awards to these three entities for premium pay. And that concludes the referral to the county attorney's office on that matter.
Mr. Agnew, did you,
I just. To
Mr. Gaddy?
point on the CWI applications, I think at the point of application, there was never an expectation that all four applications would be funded and seriously considered for funding, as much as it was having the committee determine what was the best fit for our priorities and the limits of the, the program. And based on that, my reading of the application, understanding of the rules, I think the most logical approach to this would be to fully fund the $75,000 request for the funds lost due to canceled fundraisers. And that would be a sort of a cleaner approach to being able to support CWI and their operations. Because I do, they're a critical institution. And that would sort of help us navigate some of the other thorny issues we might be dealing with.
So under the 75,000, that's a straight assistance to non-for-profits. You're suggesting that's the cleaner award for all of the CWI requests?
Yes,
Is that a motion?
yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Mr. Thomas,
That makes sense.
discussion. Supervisor Seaver.
Thanks, Chairwoman. I'd just like to confirm with our county attorney that that's what I heard him say and how our colleague from the planning department just rephrased it, that this is a applicable category and we can move forward with this. Because we will have a lot of questions coming from the community and employees about why you can up one and not the other. So I just want to be really clear that we're only approving this for assistance and lost revenue.
Yeah, there was the funds lost due to canceled fundraisers.
Funds lost due to, right. I think we're okay. I think it's a policy question and that we are okay under this category for addressing negative economic impacts, assistance to not-for-profits for lost revenue during the COVID pandemic. All right. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that one carries. And yes,
Are we also talking about the Warrensburg EMS?
Yeah.
yes.
My notes, and they're definitely not as thorough as the applications, but my notes have this as equipment. So did they maybe just put themselves in the wrong category? Or my notes might be missing something.
We pull up the application.
Yeah.
This is, okay, hold on. Oh, I'm on the wrong one. I was like, babe, what? That's not right. Okay. Okay, this does say we need to replace all of our AEDs and need to outfit several first responders that live in town. That does seem like equipment, not premium pay. And maybe we put that with the rest of the EMSs.
I'm not gonna pick a category, but yeah, some other category.
Well, I'm suggesting that we refer it to the rest of the, well, they did submit an application. Let me take that back. We would put it in a different bucket for sure.
I apologize. I'm looking at the application. It says, this is the application I reviewed, premium pay for essential workers.
It does say
Offer
that.
additional support to those who have and will bear the greatest health risks because of their service. So
But then under description, it says they want to replace their AEDs.
Is it when the
Right.
detailed budget was?
Let me pull up the detailed budget. Yeah, interesting. All right, let me share my screen. Warrensburg EMS.
sure.
Yeah, they have money for AEDs, medical ventilation devices, life pack, cardiac monitor, first response equipment, stretcher, power load system, and all of that is 150,000. They don't put anything under personnel. So I think they just
I think
Yeah, it's categorized, yeah.
incorrectly.
Is that what their ask was, 150,000?
Right there. You can see it. See this one?
No, I don't see it.
It's on the screen.
No, I know it's there.
Let's do, okay, you know, all right, hold on. I can just move this over. for a second. Someone remind me. Okay, we gave, so North Warren Emergency Squad was awarded 75,000 for an ambulance, if I recall correctly. These haven't gone through the full board yet.
So they're asking for money for an ambulance. What about Bay Ridge? What are they asking for?
Was that, which one was the sim man?
These are ones we awarded at the last committee meeting, Dennis, and I can't remember.
Yeah,
what-
one's for a training apparatus, another one's for defibrillators.
So that one's going to be the fire department,
No, that's emergency squad, Warrensburg Emergency Squad.
the 30,000 for the fundraiser?
More just go was Jamboree, right?
Is Warrensburg emergency?
I think we already-
Different than.
I think it is,
EMS?
yeah.
Okay.
Oh, maybe I'm wrong.
I mean, something we can come back to, but I think we can take it out of the premium pay bucket.
Yeah.
Have a
Yes,
conversation
okay.
about right now.
Definitely.
Good, all right. Anything further for today?
Move we adjourn.
A motion to adjourn, do I have a second? Any discussion?
Well, done.
Next meeting, good, thank you. I'm gonna try to set a next meeting while we're here together. And I'll get you right out of here. Week of the 7th. Let's not do it until after election. How about? Would Wednesday afternoon work?
Couldn't do the morning.
I could do the morning.
I will not be here if it's in the morning or early afternoon.
Will you be back by 2?
I will make myself here by 2.
We're looking at Wednesday, the 9th? No, that's no good. Okay, how about the 10th? I can do the morning, I can't do the afternoon.
I can't do the morning.
Okay, how about the 11th is Veterans Day?
No.
No, okay. Does that put us to the 14th? Do we have committee meetings that day? No.
Not right now, but that's the week
Yeah.
that we're considering scheduling personnel interviews for county administrator.
Second interview.
Okay, do you know, is that in the morning or the afternoon?
I'm not sure yet. I think they were gonna start around 10 o'clock, but I'm not positive. They haven't been firmly scheduled yet, but that's the date we're
I
looking
think
at.
all of them one day.
All that day? Okay, so how about the 15th? Yes, okay, morning,
Or
9 AM on the 15th? November 15th at 9 AM.
30?
Sure, we can do 9:30.
I can't make it.
You can't make it, Dennis? Can you make it later in the day?
Yes,
What time?
afternoon.
Can people do 1? 1 o'clock on the 15th?
But if we're gonna do it in the afternoon, can we make it later in the afternoon? 3 o'clock.
Can we split the difference somewhere so that if
2,
people
yeah.
are on lunch, they can.
No,
How about 2 o'clock? On the 15th?
I'll see you at 3.
well, let's do it at 3.
Let's do it at 3. We were meeting at 3.
Even by 4. Thanks. Can we do 2:30?
2:30.
By then. You can't make it here before.
We're gonna start at 2:30.
2:30 until when?
Put a couple hours. Today, we did a good job, although 3 hours. So November 15th at 2:30 PM. Any further discussion before we